Let's do this thing. Hello, everybody, and welcome to ATP Insights, where we cover the most important tech news, tech stories, tech stuff in Asia. Today is Monday, the 27th of July. Let's get to it. We are going to talk about Thailand's massive AI and infrastructure bet. That should be super interesting. And as we always say, we've got another great show. We've got a great lineup of guests today. We're going to start with Sebastiaan Kager, founder and head of technology at FynTun. He's going to join us to talk about how continuous AI-driven compliance will help businesses close deals sooner and scale in regulated markets. And following that, we will welcome YJ Soon, co-founder at Tinkercademy, to discuss how AI-enabled learning and software creation will help businesses build with smaller teams. And next, we're going to talk to Julian Fayad, founder and CEO at LoanOptions.ai, to cover how AI-powered lending platforms can help businesses improve access to credit and make better financing decisions. And then Bagg, the founder at, founder mess ups. I don't know. We'll ask Ben exactly what he wants to call his company. We'll talk about how AI and greater openness about failure will help businesses build more capable founders and more resilient teams. And later on, we will be joined by Dominic, CEO at GoUpscale, to explore how AI-powered content management or engagement will help financial institutions build stronger client relationships and improved sales effectiveness. And finally, Siraj, Dahal, the founder at Gilver.ai, will join us to talk about how visual market intelligence will help investors and financial businesses understand capital movements and make better informed decisions. And before we get to all of our guests and a little bit of news, let's hear from our first presenting sponsor, Twilio. Twilio is the secure and scalable platform to build amazing customer engagement without the complexity. With the AI-driven workflows you need to connect, they are trusted by over 300,000 businesses. It is the platform that simply makes more possible. Visit Twilio.com to start building today. Okay, let's get to some news. Thailand's massive artificial intelligence, AI, and technology infrastructure bet. Let's get some details on this. Thailand reported $43.6 billion in investment promotion applications during the first half of 2026. Just sit down and listen to the size of that number. $43.6 billion. Now, we've talked about some of these investments along the way, but now that the first half of the year is officially over and we've consolidated all this data, that's a 37% increase from the previous year. And look, Martin and I talk about this on AGTP, but frankly, even offline all the time. Countries like Thailand are perfectly placed to do the things that other countries not don't want to do, but that they can't do. Thailand has a whole host of excess land, an unbelievable technology infrastructure already built into the country, connectivity that until you come here, right? We live in Bangkok. We live in Bangkok in Thailand. So until you come here, you don't know how amazing it is. I mean, I remember actually typing to somebody, I have gigabit Ethernet at home. And there's nowhere that I can't go. And it doesn't matter how far away from my home I drive, whether it's 100 kilometers or 1,000 kilometers, everywhere along the way, I've got Wi-Fi access, I've got 5G access. The country's made an unbelievable infrastructure investment themselves, and now they're welcoming other companies. They've basically set up an infrastructure here across the board, not just in the EEC, the Eastern Economic Corridor, not just up north in Chiang Mai, but literally if you drive through Thailand from Bangkok, whether you go northeast or northwest or just straight north, and frankly, if you go south as well, the technology infrastructure that's here, I won't say it's second to none, because I haven't lived in a lot. I've lived in Thailand for 15 years now, so I know what it's like here. But I know when I travel to other countries, getting Wi-Fi at the same speed that I get Wi-Fi in Bangkok, almost impossible. And it's not just in Bangkok. Okay, a couple of weekends ago, I took a weekend trip. I was in the countryside somewhere, and my 5G connectivity was pristine. Anyway, this figure, this 37% increase, this $43.6 billion increase in promotion applications covers 1,299 projects. And even though this money is not already spent, those checks have not been cashed, the BOI, or the Board of Investment, have approved these projects valued at $38.7 billion. So it leaves a $5 billion gap. But I mean, you want to argue with me about $5 billion when 38.7 is already enough? Again, that's money that's already been spent. That's stuff that's already been approved. The digital sector accounted for roughly $33 billion, and more than 3/4 of that total application value to the BOI. Most of this was connected to data centers, which makes sense, right? Cloud services, again, Google, Microsoft, all coming here to build cloud services, data hosting, all sitting in the same place. And frankly, the supporting equipment needed to run them. We reported on stories actually earlier this year about Google, about Microsoft. We know that Alibaba also builds stuff in Thailand. Alibaba, the owner of Lazada, has to have massive data centers in Thailand to be able to run the businesses that they run here. And to the extent that data sovereignty matters to anybody, and we spent a lot of time talking about that across all of our shows as well, that data sovereignty means that a lot of the data that Alibaba is building and creating and consolidating through its e-commerce businesses and frankly its other businesses along with its cloud business for companies in Thailand is going to remain in Thailand. Okay, but, and having said this, and I think this is true sort of across the board for any type of technology project or any type of sort of technology building or infrastructure building, you can look across the world for this, whether that's in Europe, whether it's in China, whether it's in the United States, or even in Central or South America. Much of the headline growth came from a small number of exceptionally large projects. Thailand approved 6 major investments worth approximately $29 billion in May. That's almost $5 billion a project. Yeah, my math is pretty good. It's 30 billion, but I mean, come on, work with me. Including a $25 billion data storage and processing project linked to TikTok. So something like TikTok, obviously very, very popular in Thailand, but very popular in Asia, to be fair. The fact that they're building stuff, a data storage and processing project in Thailand, not surprising. Not surprising at all. And if this is part of the TikTok company that's actually related to China, China and Thailand have had a really unbelievable relationship for years. Okay, and if you look at even the population breakdown from a tourist perspective, there's a lot of travel, but also a lot of business actually that gets done between China and Thailand. Microsoft themselves have also announced more than $1 billion of additional investment in Thai cloud and AI infrastructure. AWS opened its Thailand cloud region in January 2025 as part of a longer-term investment program. Look, we've lived here. I've lived here, like I said, for 15 years. Every big sort of hyperscaler wants to be in Thailand for a whole host of different reasons, but not the least of which, to be fair, is that the Ministry of Digital Economy and Science, right, and Technology, excuse me, is very progressive, very forward-looking. They want to support the technological economy in Thailand. DEPA, which is the Digital Economy Promotional Agency, also works internally and externally to promote technological innovation in Thailand. And then there's the EC, the Eastern Economic Corridor, which is where a lot of the high-powered S-curve type manufacturing takes place in Thailand, and they want to have more of that as well. So Thailand is becoming, if it hasn't already become, kind of a serious physical location for the regional computing infrastructure. And remember, it's not land constrained. So Singapore is great. It's super duper great. And there's a ton of investment money that's based in Singapore. We talk a lot about how forward-looking the regulators are there. And to be fair, there's a lot of activity between the regulators in Thailand and in Singapore. They go back and forth. They talk to each other. They inform each other. They make decisions together. A lot of this stuff, particularly in the financial services agencies, right? So if you look at what happens in the Office of Insurance Commission in Thailand, speaking a lot to the Monetary Authority of Singapore. I wouldn't say they harmonize their regulations, but I wouldn't say they're that different either. And if you look at what's happening in the fintech and insurtech sectors in both countries, I would say they're very similar. And part of that is held up to the infrastructure that's actually getting built in Thailand. And here's one of the reasons why. Thailand is a large country. It's very well managed. The government here is very, very interested in promoting the digital economy and has been for a while. Thailand essentially didn't invent it, but like a deeply supportive of digital nomads, which means that a lot of people want to come here to build companies, to start some sort of technology business. And to be fair, whether that's in Phuket or Koh Phangan or in Bangkok or in Khon Kaen or in Chiang Mai, there are plenty of places to be in Thailand, but in between there, and again, if you drive through the country or take a train through the country, you'll see there is plenty of open land. And I wouldn't say there's an excess of electricity, but building it is not hard here. Thailand is one of the biggest builders of solar energy in Southeast Asia, if not one of the biggest builders of solar energy in Asia as well. And that definitely helps build the infrastructure here. The economy here is large. There's a ton of industrial land and warehousing. And also, you may or may not know this, but like established electronics manufacturing and close proximity to other ASEAN markets. think about how close, like take a look at a map and think about how close Thailand is to Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, also Singapore, and the Philippines, and frankly to India and to China as well. I think India is like a 4-hour flight away. So if you just think about that, excuse me, it makes perfect sense that all of this stuff gets built in Thailand. It's super central actually to the entire region. And the government is directly related to developing AI governance institutions through the Electronic Transactions Development Agency and its AI governance center. So Thailand, and again, they're so good at this. I have been duly impressed in the entire time that I've lived in Bangkok with just the level of, what's the right word? Technological literacy, and not just of the government, but of the population, of the people in this country. Okay, you see people everywhere, multiple mobile phones they're carrying around, and everybody that I know uses either Gemini or ChatGPT or some form of Anthropic. Okay, so the AI business here is super huge, and we know because we've spoken about this before. Amity, which is a Thai-originated company, is one of the largest AI providers, not just in Thailand but in the region, and recently raised $100 million to support it, the building out, but also the business support and biz dev of its AI business. And it also deals with some of the largest customers in Thailand to provide artificial intelligence services to them. Now, here's the thing. The economic impact, and we'll go in more detail on this in a moment, but the economic impact of building out this infrastructure, what did we say it was? 43, just think about how big that number is, $43.6 billion. It's more than just like the buildings and the servers. So data centers also, as I mentioned earlier, consume a huge amount of electricity. And at some level, so they don't employ like thousands and thousands of people, but the data centers have to get built, the servers have to be configured, all this stuff has to happen here. And one of the other things that Microsoft and both Google through their Google Cloud business and Microsoft Azure business have committed to doing, and AWS as well, is, I won't call them educational programs, but creating more artificial intelligence literacy in the countries in which they operate. And that's something that they've committed to doing in Thailand as well. Now, the rubber will hit the road when, or the more important local benefit, I mean, both of these things are actually true at the same time, will really come to fruition when the Thai government and local Thai businesses, whether they're international or MNCs, it doesn't really matter to me, or just purely local businesses, can access this infrastructure at competitive prices. And whether the local suppliers here in the business, and Amity is like a good example of this, even though they have offices all over the world. It's a very global company for a bunch of different reasons. But where in the value chain all of this new stuff sits is also going to be really important. And again, getting back to this idea of building the technical talent to ensure that when all of this stuff is built, that the right people and the right types of people with the right skill set are here to be able to support that. Okay, now let's just jump into a couple of things quickly before we get to our guests as well. What's driving this, right? So like, why would people want to invest in Thailand? Who's coming in to do it, and how much money are they actually spending? Let's go into this in a little bit of detail. So digital investment represented approximately $33 billion of the committed $43.6 billion in total. As I said, the numbers were heavily influenced by data center and cloud projects rather than evenly distributed growth across the country. But that's true for sort of almost any investment. And again, if you look at the way the BOI, right, so the Board of Investment, has set up their desired places for these things to be built, whether it's car manufacturing, electronics manufacturing, any of the S-curve manufacturing that gets done in the country. A lot of that happens in the EEC, so the Eastern Economic Corridor. And if you think about where Bangkok sits above the Gulf of Thailand, the EEC is over here, because Thailand like sort of has these two prongs that go down. Right, here's the western side, Phuket's over here, and on the eastern side of the country, right, where you're also going to see high-speed rail get built to connect a lot of these sort of locations. And there's also another airport down there that used to be an old military airport that's going to be converted into a regular airport. So a lot of the stuff that's happening here from an infrastructure standpoint is not just like the AI and data center buildings that are going to get built, but also the infrastructure around it that needs to support it. And to be fair, like I said, the EEC has something that's been around for decades in Thailand. And here's another really interesting point about this, right? Singapore entities, but I want to be careful about this. Singapore-based entities accounted for about 75% of these foreign investment applications. And it doesn't mean, though, let's be careful about this, right? It doesn't mean that the ultimate or the end investors are Singaporean. Let's be clear about that. I think a lot of the MNCs put their base their headquarters for this region in Singapore. And when that money comes in, it comes out of their Singapore entity. But a lot of that gets driven out of what's happening in the United States via their offices in Singapore, because Singapore is going to have the closest look on what's happening in this region. And they know, the Singaporean entities know for a fact, actually, that the likelihood of building a data center, an AI-enabled data center, a cloud computing data center in Thailand, the propensity to have that done is way higher than it is in Singapore, where land comes at a premium. And while the staff in Singapore may be slightly better skilled, and that's a big maybe to me. Again, I live in Thailand, I know, and a lot of the technology people that I know in this region in Thailand are just as skilled as the people in Singapore, for sure. And to be fair, a lot of Thai people go to Singapore and work, and vice versa. A lot of Singaporeans come to Bangkok to work. So there's a pretty good exchange, actually, of skill sets there. But the ultimate investors are most likely big United States companies. There are probably some, like some of the big financial services companies in Singapore, will definitely want to utilize some of the technology that's getting built in Thailand, and they have done that for decades. I mean, to be fair, if you literally walk like less than 1 kilometer from my home, there's the Bangkok headquarters of UOB, United Overseas Bank, which is a very big, very prominent, very important, Singaporean bank. And that's normal. Like, that doesn't surprise anybody. There's a lot of sort of cross-pollination between what's happening there and what's happening here. And again, as I mentioned, TikTok's project alone was worth $25 billion. And think about it. So TikTok, in my mind, is a Chinese company, but their Asian headquarters, and we know them because we've met these people, are based in Singapore. So it looks like that investment is coming out of Singapore. It's more likely that that's a decision that gets made actually in China. Discussions with the Singaporean entity, and then moving down and saying, look, if we're going to build a data center, if we're going to build a gigantic project, if we're going to have a big processing center, let's have that processing center actually be in Thailand. Now, here's the thing, though. The wider ecosystem in Thailand is also attracting investment. Thailand received applications for, among other things, networking equipment, cooling systems, and all these things that are associated with data centers, but all of them have to be built and all of them have to be brought in here. Servers, optical components, and other electronics used in data centers. And I want to talk a little bit about the optical side of this stuff. I know in this case, they're talking about probably optical cabling, right? Fiber optic cables. But what I want to say something, because I don't think most people understand just how sophisticated the manufacturing base is in Thailand. Thailand is also one of the largest makers of sophisticated glass. And you're like, glass? What's a sophisticated glass? What does that mean? Well, think about all the lenses that are on all the cameras that you use. Somewhere around like 37 to 42% of them are actually made in Thailand. Thai Optical is actually one of the most sophisticated makers of lenses in the world. And a lot of your large Chinese, well, not so much the Chinese, but your Japanese camera manufacturers will use Thailand's manufacturing expertise to build, manufacture, design, and attach those lenses to their cameras. That's really interesting, actually. And this whole idea of all of these things, whether it's, again, from networking equipment to the cooling system to other electronics used in data centers, this gives Thailand an opportunity to connect its existing manufacturing base with the AI infrastructure economy. And again, this is what I mean when I say that the Thai government has been very, very forward-looking. Very forward-looking when it comes to building out a sophisticated manufacturing base. And the one thing I don't think they've done really well is let the rest of the world outside of sort of manufacturers and outside of the people that are involved in sort of in the tech business understand just how sophisticated the manufacturing base is here. And I think that's actually going to end up being really, really important going forward. So just a little bit before we welcome our first guest to the show and actually thank our second sponsor. Why are they coming to Thailand now? Well, demand for AI computing, is forcing cloud providers and platform companies to distribute capacity across more locations. We've talked about this. There's some places in the United States, particularly in localities and also in Japan, where people simply do not want data centers to get built in their neighborhoods for whatever reason, for whatever sort of PR reason that they're thinking about. They don't want that to happen there. We'll come back to some of this maybe in a bit. Because we want to welcome our first guest. But again, the last thing I'll say before we go to our guests is that data sovereignty requirements and lower latency. So being closer to the place where your data lives and where your business lives with that data is also encouraging companies to operate infrastructure closer to their regional customers. Okay, Before we get to today's guest, let's get a quick message from our second sponsor, Boomi. So Boomi is the data activation company for artificial intelligence. It powers the agentic enterprise by bringing data to life across your business. Trusted by over 30,000 customers and supported by a network of more than 800 partners, Boomi helps organizations of all sizes achieve agility, efficiency, and innovation at scale. Okay, Martin, let's welcome our first guest, Sebastiaan. Sebastiaan, are you there? That's good. Hearing is actually very important for this type. If you can't hear me, we're not really going to do anything. Yeah. Anyway, it's nice to meet you. How are you?
Nice to meet you. I'm good. How are you?
It's great. I'm doing super duper. It's great to have you on the show. We wanted to have you on because we wanted to talk about how continuous AI-driven compliance will help businesses like just create trust faster, close deals sooner, and scale in regulated markets. And Martin and I actually had a bet before you came on about how to actually pronounce the name of your company. But I'm going to guess it's FynTun. Tell us a little bit about FynTun, and if I'm wrong, tell me why I'm wrong, and then give us a little bit more detail about the company.
Oh, no, you're actually right. It's FynTun. You're correct on that one. But we bastardized the name so we can get a .com.
Yeah, for sure. We're still doing this.
Yeah, we're still doing this. So that's the reason also to keep it short. So my name is Bas. I started FynTun a couple years ago. Before that, I was a security consultant or information security consultant and a standardization consultant. And before that, I was a software developer. I'm still a software developer. I still develop software. I just have multiple hats, multiple roles. So that's a bit of my background.
Can I ask you this? When you do software development, we'll get to the regulatory stuff and compliance stuff in a second, but when you do software development now, how has your process changed with the introduction of things like Codex and let's just say Opus 4.6? I know we're past 4.6 now, but like that was the real big breakthrough,
yeah? Yeah, I think so. So before it was, so I can remember, right? Before it was more or less sort of helpful, or AI would review your code and that would be helpful. However, at this current point, yeah, AI is able to develop a lot more by itself. And however, there are still pitfalls. I think there's still things that we see that aren't quite right. Does require correction, from an expert's point of view. So to say that we're at sort of 100% execution level, we're not there yet. For some points, I would say, are we ever going to get there? How much trust are we giving away? Those are discussions that are very active right now. But definitely has changed a lot. It's raised the ceiling for experts, I think, and it's raised the floor for beginners. I would say that's the take.
Yeah, and look, I'll say this before we get into the compliance stuff. Just give me one more second. That is, even the greatest computer programmer or code writer in the world never had full 100% autonomy, no matter what company they were sitting in, unless they were running their own company. But even then, they still did sort of bug resolution. They did code review, all this other stuff. I don't think any of that stuff is going to go away, AI or no AI. That's just my feeling on this. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Okay. Why does proving regulatory compliance, this idea of like, hey man, I'm compliant, why does it still take so long, even when a company believes its systems and policies are like in the right place and pretty sound?
Right, there's a couple of reasons for that. Of course, you've got AI-specific governance, you've got cybersecurity governance, you've got quality governance, privacy governance. These are all very relevant topics, especially for enterprise software. Can you repeat that question for me?
Yeah, so why does proving this regulatory compliance, like if somebody says to you, hey man, are you compliant? And you're like, I definitely am. Like, why is proving that as a fact still take so long?
Right. Because it's not like synchronous to software development, I would say. So maybe that's the number one pitfall. Oh, I'm doing DevOps, I'm doing security well. I've been trained. I'm hiring staff, and it's all good. I know I'm secure. However, how are you going to prove that to a government agency? because they don't have 4 weeks to go through your entire software stack, or how you're going to prove that to a supplier or a customer, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to getting a deal. The fact is just that every standard, or sometimes a law, or sometimes a standard within a law, that's quite common in Europe. It's hundreds of documents, and they all have to tell the truth. And then the first year actually usually isn't that tricky, but in the oncoming years, and you have recertifications, you have new features in your platform, you have new departments for certain different topics. Like, a lot changes in a company, and yeah, the sort of compliance, your explanation towards regulators or to auditors, has to reflect that, and then that is quite a lot more work than sometimes people may anticipate.
So this is a good point, right? So what is the disconnect between, what's the right way to say this? How engineers understand the internal systems, and how auditors expect that system to be documented, right? Because even when humans were writing 100% of the code, and I don't think we're ever going to go back to that world. One of the biggest problems is like key man problem was like, you didn't document any of the software that you were writing, right? So you'd like write all this software, it would work okay, and then you'd leave, and it'd be like, what is this thing supposed to do? So what is this idea of like what engineers, how they understand a system, and how auditors expect that system to be documented?
Right, you gotta understand that an auditor or regulator doesn't understand code, doesn't understand the technical part,
Right.
but somehow still wants to get a grip on a topic like information security and privacy. So it's much more about protocol, about let's say hygiene, sort of repeated practices that you have in your company, where you show that you're of a certain level of maturity. So the disconnect here is that actually, in a lot of cases, compliance, like standards like ISO 27001,
Yep.
they don't say you're secure. They say you have secure practices, right? That means
Interesting.
you think about security. You have it as a sort of core in your company. You meet about it. You can show that it's in your backlog. You can show you're taking certain measures for certain topics. But some companies will take that very seriously and align that with their development efforts. Other companies will just have sort of a pool of legal staff, and it's sort of a circus. It's sort of paperwork. It's just to go to the audit. So it's a flexible framework often, and it's up to the company how they implement it.
But how do you see? I mean, in my mind, right, there's downside for companies that say they're compliant, let's just say with 27001, and understand like the implications of not having a secure environment, and companies that don't, right? In other words, and with the speed with which things are moving today from a security or lack of security standpoint, how vulnerable do you think companies are that are just saying like, yeah, we're fine, as opposed to the companies that take it seriously?
Extremely vulnerable, and you actually see that. The number one reason here, the number one thing to say here is risk. I think that's the key item to say here is risk. How much risk are you willing to take, right? Actually, these standards, they incorporate risk management for a reason. Yeah, I think a lot of companies, a lot of corporates are taking quite a lot of risk, or may not be fully aware of it. We have sort of Cisco's yearly reports here on the matter specifically to Thailand, actually.
Go ahead.
And what we see there is that, maybe in newer systems, things are compliant to the law like PDPA, but these legacy systems are left behind. And that's just often ignored. So that's what you see in a lot of larger corporates, is that they don't uniformly keep track of all their systems in a way. Another part of it is that now the fines are increasing, and enforcement is increasing. You've seen that in Europe. That's coming to Asia right now, to Singapore and Thailand. Like the PDPC is actively enforcing. So the risk you're taking now is no longer just information security. It can be financial, it can be legal. What we see with what's recently published in the last few years by the Thai PDPC is that more and more actually management is held personally responsible. And what we see in the Netherlands, where we operate as well, and in Europe, we see that with these new cybersecurity laws and NIS2, actually as CEO or management teams, you are directly personally responsible for security in your team. So like legally, things are shifting.
But what does that mean? In other words, if I'm a CISO, right? Sorry, a Chief Information Security Officer, for people that don't know what that means. I hate jargon, but then I just threw some out there. But if I'm a CISO, right, and something goes wrong and it costs the company money, like what am I liable for? Like what types of breaches or what types of security issues am I liable for? And again, it doesn't just have to be the CISO. It can be somebody else who like didn't do their job. But I'm just using the CISO as a proxy for everybody else. Yeah.
It depends on the region. But if we're talking about Europe, and I think more and more the culture in Southeast Asia is heading this way, none. It's the CEO.
Oh, the CEO.
Yeah. So this is very often confused. CEOs or management think, this is not my problem, it's not my risk. I've hired a CISO, this is enough. But actually, no, as management, you're often personally liable. The CISO is just an employee. And if the CISO can show regulators that, they're not, it's not malfeasance, right? They did their job. Then you're technically on the grill as a CEO.
So how does agentic AI reshape how companies build and scale the infrastructure that runs this stuff for them? And I don't mean just AI itself, but I mean the agentic side of it, because then I want to talk about what the risks are of employing agentic AI.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think there's a risk. There are multiple risks with agentic AI.
Go ahead.
One of them is sort of shadow use by employees. So you see this with Hermes agents or Claude or OpenClaw. You may have heard of these solutions. The moment that an employee has access to company data that's confidential or sometimes even sensitive, we're talking about maybe customers or patients in medical terms. And they've got that connected to their own personal WhatsApp, right? And now sort of all of this giant pool of data that's supposed to be confidential is now exposed through a single prompt injection that anyone can send to someone's personal WhatsApp.
But wait a second.
Or through someone's personal WhatsApp.
Why are we giving, I want to go through this. So maybe you can explain to people what shadow usage is by employees, but then talk to me about why they would have access in their personal WhatsApp. And again, I'll just give you an example of like when I was working at Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, and I know it's a while ago, but still like they shut down the CD drive so you couldn't actually copy stuff onto like a read-write CD. They also shut down the disk drive. This is obviously more than 25 years ago, but still like, so you couldn't literally take stuff off your machine. And then once they did wide area networking, you couldn't just like copy stuff anywhere you wanted. How is it now possible? Or is there just so many surfaces out there now that controlling every single one of them has just become so unwieldy that they just give up and be like, yeah, sure, fine. Just connect it to your personal WhatsApp and that's fine.
Yeah, well, it hides in a lot of different spaces, right? Sometimes companies may not be aware that there's confidential information somewhere. What we see, for instance, with a lot of doctors in the Netherlands, that sometimes they'll write notes in places that they really shouldn't be writing patient notes in, for instance.
Got it. Okay. Go ahead.
So that's one thing. But if you have something, even like a task management app like Jira or Asana, it contains information about brand new features of some secret new system, and a developer has an MCP connected to that, has it connected to Cloud Code or whatever, and that's normally fine. But if you'd have something like an autonomous agent running like OpenClaw, and that's connected to their email, to their WhatsApp, so they can communicate with that agent through those channels, you now have that confidential, now have a new sort of road to that information. Do you understand what I mean?
I do. It's just, I think things have just changed so much since I left the corporate world, and there are way too many surfaces. But this is the other question about this. is that before there was agentic AI, before there were API connectivities to sort of every function inside of a piece of software, and before MCP was there, you didn't have a lot of, or this idea of continuous connectivity from outside internal to a company. What does this do, and how does this impact the way big companies look at? You mentioned cybersecurity earlier, but how does it impact the way they look at this when there are just so many doors to be opened, and it's hard to keep track of which ones are and which ones aren't?
Yeah, I think it's almost comparable to social engineering, if you know that term. Social engineering is where you would walk into an office and you'd act like you're, I don't know, the lead IT or police officer. You ask for someone's password, and sometimes they'll give it to you, sometimes not. That's, however, a very difficult attack to perform. And if you get caught, then your disguise is blown, right?
Mm.
The thing is, like, with AI, and specifically agents, like, you can blow past these guardrails quite easily.
Can you?
And you get unlimited attempts. Like, your disguise is not really blown, so you can run them in the milliseconds essentially, and you can repeat and get access to information. So it isn't really equal to social engineering, but I would say it's sort of social engineering on steroids almost. It carries a lot higher risks.
Yeah, because I mean, if I like dress up as a police officer and try to, or a lawyer or whatever, and just walk into a company, I kind of get one shot at it, right? Because everyone's going to know it's me unless I do a whole bunch of weird sort of Mission Impossible style masking stuff. But with agents, I can create as many agents as I want, just keep trying to knock on the doors and keep trying to get in. What, from a sort of compliance and regulatory standpoint, what are some of the key technical challenges that these teams need to solve, like, right away?
Right. I think don't just rely on guardrails, because with repeated attempts, about 70% of the guardrails fail. So we heard that in a lot of corporate explanations, and I get the feeling that these type of solutions, they exist sort of to please regulators or to please decision makers. Like, oh, hey, there's at least something, protecting these sort of weird requests.
Right.
I think, like, authorization and authentication should always be, should never be in the hands of probabilistic system. It should never be in the hands of AI. So that should always be sort of the hard backbone.
Yeah.
That's everything. It sounds like common sense, but with a lot of vibe coders out there nowadays, that security element is really sort of skipped. We also see CEOs often coming to us like, "Hey, I've developed my own app with AI," and they think it's in a ready state for deployment, right? Which a lot of questions arise there. It's like, it's not just only security; it's also maintenance. It's also data portability. It's ensuring things like backups are made, and so that is kind of the easy part that was automated, right? And but that does sort of give you that adrenaline rush, or that gives these people adrenaline rush. They get something done which was very difficult, like it had a very high learning curve. But they're not experienced enough to know that, actually this maintenance part and security part and reviewing the code and making sure that things are in a production ready state. I think that's a major risk as well.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, look, you mentioned three really important things, right? The architectural stuff, right? So like a CEO goes and vibes code something, which is the second thing you mentioned, and the security stuff slips there. But also, like, you put up guardrails. And I think this is something that I try to explain to people all the time. I'm curious what you think about this, is that the guardrails at the end of the day are being created, or at least thought through, by humans. Sure, they may even let like an AI agent actually go out and write the program for it. But it's like a bunch of guys and gals getting together in a room and saying, like, where's our risk? What do we need to identify? What do we need to solve for? And then having the software go out and do it. But at the end of the day, like, humans are fundamentally lazy. And I always say, like, they've got a soccer game to go to on a Friday night, or their kids' football game, whatever it is. How do we disintermediate that? And then I'll let you go.
Disintermediate what exactly?
Disintermediate the fact that like so many people now are out there vibe coding, that there are guardrails out there, but the guardrails are created by humans, and that like even if you write a program, like you said, like you're a lot of like the people that are vibe coding don't understand like computer science architecturally, right? So
Yeah.
they don't understand how that works. So they write something and then it seems like it works until it doesn't, because it doesn't have any security built into it. It doesn't understand the data structure properly, and it doesn't understand the overall architecture of the company's software implementations. It ends up being more of a mess than anything else.
Right, right. No, I agree. I think things generally, that's always been the case in history, is things have to go wrong before they're corrected.
Yeah.
Right? They say rules are written in blood. So if you look at cybersecurity 30 years ago, 20 years ago, every system was hackable because nobody ever considered that there would be bad actors on a network. So really, a lot of software out there was quite vulnerable. I remember I've been coding for quite a long time. It's been a hobby that started when I was a teenager. Back in the day, with these old versions of PHP, didn't have protections to things like SQL injection attacks. So people weren't thinking about it. Eventually, these things, they turn into standards, they turn into laws, they turn into ISU standards, ISO standards, and currently the world is a lot more secure, right? Basically, almost every app that you would download from a startup, you can ensure is usually quite secure, has secure authentication protocols, and this type of thing. I think for AI, it's going to be similar. There's a lot of new laws in the works. There are new governance standards, and it's just going to take a bit of time. We're just lagging behind that before those come into place. I think we're going to have to see a couple of gigantic errors that will serve as examples in people's minds of what not to do. And those will lead to eventually, I think, a more mature landscape. So I think that's it. We see a lot more of these standards pop up for AI governance, and they're gaining popularity. I think Singapore government is considering enforcing ISO 42001, I think it was.
Something like that, yeah.
I'm not so sure how far they are with that. That's something I have to read into more, because we operate a lot from the security side. But we're definitely interested in the AI governance side as well. It's just currently a bit difficult to find customers in that area, I think.
Perfect.
But I think we'll get there.
Okay, Bas. Thank you so much for your time today. Obviously, lots to cover here. Thank you for spending so much time with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, before we welcome our next guest, let us thank our third sponsor, HCL Tech. HCL Tech is supercharging progress with AI that moves beyond ambition and delivers real business impact. A recognized leader in artificial intelligence, trusted by global enterprises to turn technology into transformation. HCL Tech is supercharging progress. Martin, let's welcome YJ Soon, the co-founder at Tinkercademy, into the show as well. YJ, how are you? I am super duper, man. Thank you for your patience. No, it's really great to have you. Okay, look, we wanted to have you on because we wanted to talk about how AI-enabled learning, something with which you're very familiar, and software creation is going to reshape workforce skills and help businesses build with smaller teams. But before we get to that, tell us a little bit more about Tinkercademy.
Tinkercademy is a small company here in Singapore, and we run coding training, although I'm not sure how much longer we're going to be running coding training. So I was a science teacher. I used to teach in high school, and we do a lot of training for students. And so we used to teach like introductory coding, we teach web development, app development, and things like that. But more recently, the demand has, of course, been for AI, and we are grappling with the fact that we might never need to teach coding again. So that's something that we are, spending a lot of time thinking about.
Yeah, sorry. So do you really think that that's true, that you won't have to teach coding again? Do you know what I mean? In other words, like, I don't want to make the exact one-to-one analogy here, but like, I don't have to light a fire to cook a cake, but do you know what I mean? But I still need to know like how to bake and all these sort of little nuances around baking, even though I have an oven. Do you know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah,
I'm not saying an oven is
yeah.
the same thing as agentic coding, but it's not that far away. And shouldn't we understand like the reason why yeast makes bread rise as opposed to just dropping it in there and hoping that it does rise? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I do like the cooking analogy because I do tell my students that not all of you will grow up to be professional chefs, but maybe some of you want to make home cooked meals at some point. There's a nice article floating around
I'm
about
glad
that.
I went there with that. That was just serendipity, but fair enough. Go ahead.
And I think, but I think it depends on what outcome you want. And we found that a lot of students enjoy coding for the sake of it. And for them, I think they should absolutely continue to learn all the fundamentals they can because
Agreed.
they're more important than ever. But just like if you want to be a professional chef, you have to learn all of that. But if all you want to do is to, whip up some scrambled eggs in the morning, maybe you don't need to know everything about how eggs cook and things like that.
Yep. Can I say this though? The usefulness at scale of knowing how to scramble a couple of eggs is closer to 0 than it is to 1. It just is, right? Because no one's going to go to like a scrambled egg rest. Do you know what I mean? And just using the sort of food cooking and food prep and restaurant analogy, as far as we possibly can. But there's so much other stuff that's going on inside of a kitchen, like just the structure of the kitchen, the way it works. And let's just say this. What if the head chef dies or can't come into work that day? You need to know like how to accomplish this stuff. And what if some of the systems that you're using like stop you run out of tokens or you can't code anymore in a way that's agentic? What are you going to do? You can't just sit there and do nothing, right? And you also have to know like why this output is being created, meaning the coding output, right? Because even when you're coding, you're not just typing functions and stuff. You're like, oh, this is going to lead to that, and this loop needs to that loop, and if then that kind of thing. You have to know what's going on architecturally, otherwise you're just creating gobbledygook code. No.
Well, again, I guess there's the audience because there's a good number of people out there. So not just students, but working adults, people who might
fair
never
enough.
have a chance to build something, and now they can, and they're never going to. All they want to do is scramble that egg, I guess, right? All they want to do is cook that instant ramen or something like that. And if things go wrong, I guess it's good for them to know that there are professionals around. There are the fact that they should know their limits. But the interesting thing is that when we teach adults how to vibe code, I found that I have a 14-day web development course. I skip days 1 to 10. I skip all of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, backend, front end, things like that, and we go straight to like APIs. We go straight to what's
MCP.
a database, why you need it, MCPs, and how things communicate and things like that. So there seems to be an opportunity here to skip past a lot of fundamentals if you don't need them right now. But of course, if you're going to go work for a big tech company, by all means, I think you should backfill all of that information at some point.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't it mean that the people that come to your classes are actually going to be more hardcore in the sense that they really need to understand certain things? Can I give you another example? Like my dad would not let me get my driver's license until I learned how to like get onto a hill, put the car in neutral, push the emergency brake down, have a truck behind me, and be able to get into first gear without stalling, even though I was never going to drive a stick shift. The idea was you need to understand how the car works and just like all the risks around and all the things to which you need to pay attention so you can drive properly. Shouldn't it mean that the people that come to your coding classes now don't want to skip days 1 to 10, but they really want to understand how HTML works, how all the other stuff works before they get to the APIs and the MCPs, so that when the code gets written for them, they're like, I see what's happening here. So now I can effectively write the other stuff.
I mean, but if we stick to the car example, there's plenty of folks out there who just learn automatic driving, right? So they just want to.
I know, and those guys are dangerous, though. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that was me, right? So
exactly.
Like in Singapore, I think when I was growing up, we had to learn manual, but I went to the US for school and I picked up my license over there. And when I came back, I couldn't drive a manual. I had to help someone drive a manual, and I sputtered out of the.
Using the wrong hand as well.
I know, yeah. So it's but then at the same time, just like driving, right? There are people who just want to get from point A to point B, and there are working adults who just want to make one thing of their own. And I think there's a market for these people. There's a market for these people to know that they can build what they dreamed about without having to become a professional F1 driver or a car mechanic or things like that.
Yeah, fair enough. So how do new graduates, like if you, let's say you're going to school and you're studying computer science, which is still a thing, right? Because to be clear, computer science is not computer programming. These are, I wouldn't say they're very different things, but they are different things, which I don't think most people understand. But if you're a new graduate, how do they need to adapt to like this new environment right now?
I don't have a good answer for that.
You're grappling with it. So like maybe what are some of the conversations that you're having internally when you're talking about this stuff? If you know what I mean? And if you can just expose some of it, right? Because for those of us that sit outside this, we think we know what's going on, but we don't know really. You know way better than we do.
So, I mean, like as a small business owner, I'm having the time of my life because I can build anything I want. I can, I'm a programmer at any time. I just need to spin up more Claude subscriptions to get what I want. At the same time, as an educator, it's a really grim time because I used to hire interns to do this. I used to hire new hires, and now I'm like, I could just get another Claude subscription and yell at it some more. So it is something that we're thinking about a lot. I think especially here in Singapore, there's like computer science is really one of the most popular subjects right now. There's a lot of graduates coming out of school, and I think it's a pragmatic Asian mindset where it's the toughest course to get into, so people want to do it. I think those who get in for the love of the game, the people who enjoy what they're doing, they're going to be fine because they know how to adapt. They can do more things than ever. I am worried about people who just they're just here because it's the course that everyone takes because it's so hard to get into.
Yeah,
it's going to be. I don't think the number of programming jobs will go down, but the expectations for what they might be able to do, like you're not going to get your big tech jobs. There might still be programmers, but not all of them are going to get the type of tech jobs that they might have thought they signed up for, is my guess.
So if that's the case, though, what do you think happens to compensation as well? Do you know what I mean? Because what are you really paying for? And on top of that, I know this is like a multi-part question, but a Claude subscription is not free either. And if you end up paying, and I know that Anthropic keeps going back and forth on this, you know what I mean? It's just like, we're going to charge you for an arm and a leg for this. Like, no, keep your arm, keep your leg, which it's until the 15th. Now it's the 22nd. You know what I mean? They keep moving the target.
That's fine.
Yeah. But again, it's not free either. So how do you balance this idea of, I can just spin up another Claude subscription, or I could hire an intern? Like, where does the ROI start to matter and the cost start to matter and sort of the token maxing or token cost start to matter as well when you're thinking about these things?
I think it's the same as what many programmers are facing because we know that there's a few parts to making a project, right? There's planning and there's the review, and then there's the part where you actually code. And the coding part is shrunk, right? The time taken for coding has shrunk. But I have 25 projects, but about 15 of them are stuck because they need a human to review. I need to be like, I finished. Yeah, great. Good job, Soul Ultra. You finished it over the weekend. I don't have time to review what you've done.
Time to look at it. Yeah, exactly.
So I think there's still, and I hate that people are talking about it like this, but there's still some room for taste and discernment. You still need someone to be able to say, this is worth working on. This path is worth continuing on. This code might be slop, but we can fix it. We can make it better. I think there's room for people to grow along those lines, and that's how they can make themselves more valuable in this new age where code is cheap.
Why do we hate talking about taste and discernment? I mean, Steve Jobs famously sat next to Bill Gates. I think it was with Kara Swisher and Walt Moskowitz. Do I have his name right? And said like, and said like very openly, like the biggest problem with Microsoft is they have no taste.
I know. I mean, it's a nice thing to be able to have, but it feels very exclusionary at the point where it feels as though I find it difficult to blame people for producing AI slop. It's easy for us. Well, it's easy for those of us to see that something is slop. Like if you see web designs out there, they have all these like telltale signs, right? All your left rails and eyebrow texts and things like that. But that's because we've had the privilege of seeing all that. We've had the privilege of generating all that. Even people who can recognize text that is AI generated, we're in a privileged position because we get to see all that. The people who are new to all this, I mean, to them, they're just making stuff, right? They're just having a time of their lives. They're just making new things and putting it out there. And yeah, to me, it just doesn't feel fair. It doesn't feel fair to attribute this to a lack of taste.
But can we back up for a second, right? Again, I like you. I mean, I think in the time that we've been talking, I've made like a bunch of different analogies. I want to make another one. I feel like, 150 years ago, the guy who put shoes on a horse was not like considered a skilled craftsman because kind of everybody did it. But do you know what I mean? Now that not now, but like once cars were introduced and there were other forms of mobility, that guy essentially disappeared. But then the guy that could do that actually was very, very valuable because not a lot of people could put shoes on horses. Mm-hmm. Are we getting to a point now though where this AI slop, as you said, is so obvious? Like I can read something, just be like 100%, I'm sure I know it because there are stacking examples and there are like dashes and there's stuff in there where it's like no human would ever write. And I feel like the guy or the gal that publishes it, that literally hits send or submit on that, is the laziest person in the universe. But I know what that is. Doesn't it mean that then, and this is true for coding as well, that the code that gets written in a way that's more sophisticated, that's better, that's more efficient, is going to have a much higher value? Or are we not there yet? We're too much in the in-between stage right now to really understand that.
I think we are in the in-between stage, and I think there's room for folks who are really good at what they do. I've seen skilled writers take AI words and just do amazing things with them, and I think the same can be said for code architecturally. So yep. I think it's a matter of just making sure that people know what is the new standard, right? If the standards have risen, what are the new standards? Because the standards for code, for example, it used to be that it could just compile. Like when I run a class for my students, like the final project could be to build an app for the App Store, and they would struggle and struggle and struggle. And right when they were done, they never wanted to look at the code again. But now they can finish it in a day.
Right.
And now I'm like, yeah, well, so can everyone else. So you need to make sure that your app stands out somehow, right? So
exactly. So here's the other question. One of the things you kind of mentioned in passing is, because you can write the code stuff, I think you said as an example, like you have 25 projects that you're working on, 15 of them are done, but you don't have time to check them, which makes a certain amount of sense. Have we reached the point though where coding has become easy enough that things that were not worth working on, using your words before, are now actually worth working on, where there's actually going to be more software development, not on the slop side, but on this idea of like, before it would have taken 3 weeks to write that code, to approve that code, to check it in, to check it out, to have it debugged and stuff. But now I can do that in like a day and a half. So I should write that code now, whereas before I wouldn't have written that code.
Yeah, I think so. I think I had a friend, Vaughn, who wrote about this. He called them boring tiny tools. Like we've gotten to the point where code is now economically viable for people to write code for things that they would have just purchased or they wouldn't have been able to afford. They can just write code for it. And I also watched a video over the weekend. I think it's by Theo. So he was talking about how even if you value your code so much, you should write tons and tons of slop to support your code, which is an interesting way of looking at it. Because I mean, why not, right? Why not write a million tests? And if you're not sure about how good your tests are, write something to figure out whether your tests are good. And because we're at this interesting point where code generation is just so cheap. And that really changes a lot of the ways we approach many of these problems.
Do you think that, let me back up for a second. So there's a lot of conversation out there about like, I pay for this SaaS, I pay like $75 a month for this SaaS product, but at the end of the day, there's kind of no moat around it. Maybe I should just write that myself. And maybe some people will unsubscribe from a SaaS product, write that code themselves, but then understand all of the things you said at the beginning, where like it doesn't fit in architecturally, it doesn't have the right security built into it, and all these other little nuanced things that maybe at some point they'll cancel, and then a few months later they'll be like, you know what, it's much easier if I just go back and sign up for the SaaS? Or do you think we're going to see some of that as well?
I think engineers might overestimate the amount of engineering that other people want to do.
Yeah, so, I agree. I agree.
There was this whole thing about the SaaS apocalypse and everything. I do find that when people take our vibe coding classes, they're really excited, but maybe about like 5% of them will continue working on their projects. We can see how much they're continuing to use the credits and things like that. I think work gets in the way, life gets in the way. Not everyone wants to be building and maintaining software. So I think folks are safe, but if you're a small business and you're tech savvy enough to build the things that you want to build, I think it's a great time to be building.
And how has sort of agentic AI changed the education and learning side of this? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I really don't envy the computer science profs, because they have to assess people. I don't, right? So I'm just going in there and saying, oh, look at this AI, you can build everything now, and you do whatever you want.
Right.
But the profs have to assess for understanding. They have to figure out whether these people actually walk away ready for industry and things like that. So that's really tough. I've heard some profs say, you know what, I just tell my students it's open book. If they don't understand, and they just send me back slop, at least that's an indicator of whether they learned something.
Really?
Yeah, so they just be like, yeah, I mean, sometimes you can tell, because some students, if they truly pay no attention, if they truly put in no effort, they're just going to send in code, and maybe even the wrong language. I think I've heard that as well.
Meaning, when you say the wrong language, you mean the wrong, instead of writing it in Perl, they're writing it in Ruby or something.
They just get the wrong thing and paste it back in from ChatGPT or things like that. So I guess I mean, that's a tough job, trying to figure out whether someone really understands what's going on. I do think that it's going to have to change at some point, because even the Singapore government, they run this Code for Fun program, which we're involved in. And what they do for that is a bunch of microcontrollers. So you bring in a microcontroller, you program it. It's got a 5x5 matrix of lights. You light them up. You use Microsoft MakeCode, which is a nice little coding environment.
Okay.
And I think the danger there is that people are like, yeah, why would I spend all this time trying to figure out how to make it such that if I press this button followed by that button, these two things happen, when I can just describe it? Right. And yeah, I think we haven't quite figured that out yet. One thing I will say, though, is that the students are not as impressed by agentic coding as the adults. Because if you've never done it before, it's just you tell them, whoa, you can just write a prompt and get a game. They're like, okay, right, I got a game, sure. Whereas adults be like, oh my goodness, I tried learning this for 2 weeks before. So it's going to be interesting to see how this whole generation develops.
So one more thing before I let you go. We talked earlier about how you can tell ChatGPT, again, just as a proxy for all the LLMs, right? But you can tell ChatGPT to write something for you, and it's pretty obvious if you're involved or if you're in the bubble in which you and I exist, that the agent has done the writing. Can you look at code and tell the same thing, where you're just like, this is definitely agentic generated code?
I couldn't. I don't think I'm an expert enough programmer to do that. And I think many programmers are at some point coming around to the fact that they don't need to do that anymore. Although I'm sure there's mission critical code that people have to keep reading. But I'm not an expert programmer to be able to tell whether something is AI generated or not. I think because AI tends to the mean, and the mean code that's online probably works. So that's great. The mean writing online and the mean design online, I think people can tell. Yeah. So
it's just terrible. Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been great. I really appreciate your time. We kind of veered in and out of topic, but I appreciate your insights. It's really cool. Thanks for spending so much time with us today. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Take care.
Thanks, man. Okay, Martin, let's bring in Julian. Julian, how are you? I am super. Dude, your camera angle is cutting off most of you. You may want to angle it down just a little bit more if you can. Yeah, better, a little bit more. There you go. Now you're deeply into frame. Okay. So Julian, it's great to have you here. We wanted to have you on to talk about how AI-powered lending platforms are helping businesses just improve access to credit, accelerate approvals, and make better financing decisions. Before we get into that in detail, tell us about LoanOptions.ai.
Yeah, so we've been going in about 4 days. We'll have our 6th birthday. So we've been going almost 6 years now. Yeah, and we started as we started and still are a bootstrapped startup. I've been in the industry for 15 and a bit years now, and leading into before I got into this industry, I was in web and app development. So I was a bit of a nerd. I was building technology and systems and processes for every business I ever worked in, and then saw the problems. I ended up while I was studying, getting a job in a finance brokerage, and on my very first day, I saw them using fax machines, and I was like, "Oh, this industry is totally backwards." So I saw, a big opportunity. The process was really clunky for people to apply for a loan, to get transparency on all the products that were available to them. It just wasn't there. It was non-existent. And so piece by piece, slowly, I started building the foundations for what is now Loan Options. I started building the minimum viable product. I was 3 years before I launched Loan Options. And so that's the story of it. I launched in 2020, and we initially went B to C.
Yep.
And then I saw some opportunities in embedded finance and white labeling. So that's what we did, and we grew and exploded our growth through the embedded finance channel and through white labeling and creating partnerships off the back of that. And all along, we just kept improving technology piece by piece. So the online application form, let's make that fast, easy, transparent. The loan matching algorithm and credit decisioning engine. Let's add more lenders. Let's give people more broader products, and let's make it more accurate. And so we just, one foot in front of the other over the last 6 years have made that. But we were very early in AI. We started building AI for, like I said, almost 6 years ago. And back then it wasn't mainstream.
No, not at all. And to be fair, you didn't have the same tools that were available to you. I always like to ask people that have been building their companies since before 2023, essentially, what was the fundamental change that took place when the LLMs were introduced to you or introduced to the world, when you got the team together and you were like, okay, now what can we do? Do you know what I mean? And did it accelerate your ability to build products? Like what changed?
Yeah, definitely the speed in which we were able to build products, improved drastically. And I think the efficiency in our engineering team got a lot better. But there was also some new novel ways that we could, like, instead of trying to, spend years, months, optimizing for 1% improvement, you kind of like set up the infrastructure knowing full well that the LLMs are going to get better over time. And so, your products are self-improving now. So that's like the one thing that
what does that mean?
Not a lot of people figure.
How are the products self-improving? Sorry.
Because you're using one model today, and in 6 months' time or 12 months' time, using a totally different model, and it's significantly better, smarter, faster, cheaper in some cases. That depending on what product it is and what problem you're solving with that product. They before, in order to make a product better, go from version 1 to version 2, you required a lot of re-engineering. But if you structure your code correctly now, and you sort of relying on some elements of the LLM to whether it's to assess documentation or whatever it might be, those LLMs are getting better, and so your product accuracy and speed and other things, depending on what you're trying to solve for, actually improve over time without you having to re-engineer things.
How has
cool.
Yeah, no, it sounds really cool. What was I going to say? How has it changed the way you build a product or structure the software that supports or that enables that product? How has that changed? Because you mentioned this, you're like, we'll build a product in a way that's different, because with the anticipation that version 2.0 or 2.5 or whatever it is going to be built by a model that's even better than the one we have now, which we know by definition is true. But what do you have to build into a product using software that you didn't have to build in before, besides like the generic idea of flexibility, so that when the new LLMs or when the new sort of tools are introduced, you're like, now we can just do this in a way that's automatic? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think decision making in product has changed a little bit too. Like, we ask, which parts of these LLMs can be able to do, and which parts, because that's no longer your moat, right? Everybody can connect to the same LLMs, basically. So what becomes your moat is like, where can you deeply integrate vertically and build, let's say in our industry, it's a regulated industry. And so I always talk about like where founders can make mistakes, where they try and build too horizontal and they go very shallow. We're a regulated industry, and so it makes sense for us to like not try and compete with with chat functionality that an LLM can do way better. It makes sense for us to make sure that we've got industry specific integrations. It makes sense for us to have really good data structure so that we can build and over time accumulate proprietary data that an LLM can't necessarily have access to. And so that's changed our decision making and what products we build, because we're like, okay, what can we rely on Anthropic to, or OpenAI, or pick one of the frontier models. What are they most likely or more likely to build, or what products are they more likely to ship? And so let's stay away from that, because we don't want to spend 6-12. When you're a bootstrapped tech business, you don't have infinite resources, so you really have to cherry pick what are the niche items that, in terms of problems to solve, what are the niche items that we can build that they will never be able to get access to. From
so how do you figure that out? It's a really good point, right? So if you look at some of the stuff that Anthropic has put out there, and even some of the stuff that OpenAI, like you said, the frontier lab models in the United States, they are starting to build sort of industry-specific products. And I will say this as a caveat. In my experience, right, because we saw Google do this, where they tried to build a travel business, or tried to build a hotel booking business, or tried to build a restaurant reservation business, and yet none of that worked, because the people that were in the reservation booking business were just so much better at it than they were, even though they built these sort of platforms, even though Google built these platforms to do it. At the end of the day, Google's really only been good at two things, really. Three things, really. One, giving away products for free, like email. Two, running an advertising business, whether that's on Google itself or on YouTube. Or three, Gemini, which is sort of a generic LLM. So how do you decide when you're thinking about this, again, with not infinite resources, like we're just afraid that Anthropic is going to build this thing, so let's build this thing instead?
Yeah, it comes down to, like, for example, there's industry specific CRMs, right? Like if you build an integration, for example, with a Salesforce or a HubSpot, or like most of those systems are going to have an MCP, and there'll probably be a connector on the marketplace or something like that. And so that's not really secret sauce. But if we can deeply embed our products into niche industry specific CRMs that the likes of the frontier labs have never even heard of, as an example,
right,
then we go, okay, yeah, that's a worthwhile, worthy exercise. Now, there's a whole range of things here, right? Like, let's say you're an accredited finance broker. We have access to over 90 banks and lenders. The credit policies that we have access to, and the rates and the fees and the charges associated with those credit products, are not available on Google for Anthropic and others to scrape. Their broker channel specific credit policies, the credit policy documents that they provide, are provided only to those channels. And so they don't necessarily have the API capability for us to connect directly into. So, we've decided to build this loan matching and credit decisioning engine. And, should we decide to, we could make that available as a connector to an LLM, so an LLM can access these data, but at least we own that infrastructure, that loan matching and credit decisioning across multiple countries, 90 lenders in Australia, 30 in New Zealand, others in other countries too. So they can't get access to that. They don't have, Anthropic doesn't have the relationships with these 90 plus lenders and banks in Australia to get access to the underwriting criteria black box. And so that's what I mean by super deep and vertical. Like we're not trying to compare electricity. We're not trying to compare, health insurance and other insurance. We just do lending comparison. That's what we do. And we also provide a very slick interface for people to apply in less than 5 minutes. You could sit there and chat back and forth and one question at a time sort of thing, or you can just do it, our way, which is upload your ID, connect your bank account, upload a payslip, and through all of the proprietary knowledge, data, and training that our models have, we can actually read, analyze, contextualize all of that information and pre-fill their application for them. We've seen just about every application type by now. We know sort of complexities around borrowing structures in Australia with all these different lenders, whereas that's not something that would turn up in a data set that they're scraping from the internet. And you never say never, because we're building under the assumption.
I'm going to say never because I can say whatever I want, but I completely agree with you. And this is one of the reasons why, like, I'm never afraid when they say that like AI is going to take everybody's job, because at some point it can take any sort of horizontal task and do it, but it can't understand the context or the nuances around it. And this idea, like, I'm curious how much better your lender matching is and how much more accurate it becomes over time as you get, as you said, more and more borrower data, but then you apply the artificial intelligence to it.
Yeah, well, I was too optimistic on AI early. I was like, we're not even going to need credit, like business rules. We're not even going to need credit decisioning rules, like black and white rules. I was like, oh, once we train a model, like the AI is just going to get smarter and smarter over time, and it does. But there was issues that we ran into along the way. Like, for example, a lender makes wholesale changes to their credit policy, and now all the historical data is basically irrelevant. And so it's not, their product is not showing up to a borrower when it should.
Right.
And so I was too optimistic in the early days. And so where we've settled on is a hybrid model where we have, like, our credit decisioning engine has 4 modules. It has, the first model is credit policy and pricing. The second module is a bank statement conduct, so it can assess and review, and lenders have specific criteria around acceptable banking conduct. The third one is serviceability, so like affordability basically. And the last one is our machine learning model, and we have another neural network model that we're sort of A/B testing to see which one over the long term will get more and more accurate. But essentially, that is an AI model that looks at probability of approval with each lender. So every time we create a scenario, it's cross-checking 90 lenders and policies. Every time they enter more information, it's cross-checking again. It's creating a row of data, structured data that over time, through reinforcement learning, through other things, is going to make the model more and more accurate. And then also that combined with the information and data that we get from the rules and the outcomes from the rules-based engine, the combination of both is giving us 90+% accuracy now, and we expect that it'll never get to 100. I mean, that's maybe unrealistic, but but we're hoping to get mid to late 90s, and I think that is fairly achievable.
So what's more
based on our
likely,
current trajectory?
What's more likely to be the result of embedding AI into the sort of loan approval, the lender matching, the borrowing data process? What's more likely to be the outcome of that? Is it democratize the access to lending, or bifurcating the access in the sense that only people that 100%, because sometimes you can sit in front of a loan officer and the loan guy will be like, you're kind of on the edge, but I'm going to say yes anyway because I feel like you're going to get promoted, whatever it is, right? So how do you feel like this inserting AI into the process is going to democratize stuff, or is it going to bifurcate this market even more?
Well, I think it's working from multiple angles. So democratizing has already occurred, because now somebody that previously a task that would take maybe weeks of research, somebody can go on our website and start the process, and in less than 60 seconds they can see all of their best options.
Sure.
And you don't need to have a finance degree, you don't need to have a finance background. Before you kind of did, in order to know if you were getting a good deal or not, you sort of needed to know somebody, or you needed to be in the industry, or there was all sorts of things. Now you don't need to. You can just go and we don't accept money from lenders to like promote. We're not like a traditional comparison service where lenders can pay more money.
You're not getting paid by those guys to like
Yep. We don't do that. We don't accept money for promoting products. If they want to get ranked higher up the list, they just need to make their product better. And so
better.
Customers like that, and the feedback we've got on that has been great, and that's why we've grown the business the way that we have. But so it's happening, but like if you look at others, like it's over time, it's condensing the whole process. So like our vision is to make applying for a loan as fast, easy, and transparent as checking out in an e-commerce store. So if you think like how easy Shopify have made it to buy something from a Shopify, e-commerce store. The shop pay function, like it remembers all your details. You just click it. It's got your address. It's got your credit card information. That's what we're doing. Like if you think about in the context of like a financial passport. And so our technology is available for institutions to license from us as well. But that's what we're doing. We're building the Shopify of the lending industry, and that to me is it needs to be done in a number of different ways. One is the democratizing of the different lender options and helping people compare and contrast, but then also to help them apply and concierge them through that application process to make sure they get a successful outcome and a smooth experience. So giving you some specific examples, our 5-minute loan application. The traditional loan application was give us all of your information, type it all in manually, and usually there were very clunky forms.
Yep.
Our solution is 3 steps: upload your ID, connect your bank account, upload a payslip. That's
how does that end up being enough? How does that end up being enough information?
It's about 80 to 90% of the information we need, because we also run a credit bureau checks, a soft check in the background, and we bring in all of the credit bureau data. We do a bunch of other third-party checks depending on which market we're talking about here. But we can bring in so much information once they've provided consent, provided an ID, connected their bank account through, say, open banking, provided a proof of income like a pay slip. The services that we can run where we can cross-reference with, tax department data, how much, their income actually is versus the pay slip. And so there's a future where we don't need a pay slip or a proof of income, because we can just get that from the source. And in different markets, there might be the IRS. In Australia, it's the ATO. In New Zealand, it's the IRD, Inland Revenue. So yeah, that's the part where we've shrunk the time it takes to apply for a loan. And then in terms of what happens between application and settlement, there was this most people have had this experience at some point where your application goes into the abyss. You're like, you need to call somebody to go, what's going on? I haven't heard anything. So we built a loan tracker that, basically allows the client, with countdown timers and, a direct contact information of the person who is physically looking at their file. So they can contact the loan support person that is actually in charge of their file, not wait on hold. It's one person from start to finish, like if you want to call it a case manager or like a broker, or, but that is something that we change fundamentally in the way people can access funding. So if you think about it as 4 walls, one is access to good rates and the right lenders. One of it is the speed in which we can execute a loan from start to finish. The other one is the transparency aspect. And we've managed to take, this is not our money, right? We're not lending our own money. We have, like I said, all these lender partners that we work with, but our technology has enabled a client who was on a lunch break, a registered nurse. So she decided she needed a personal loan. From the first time she made an inquiry on our website to having money in her account, including the entire application, document collection, approval, settlement process, loan contracts, everything, 36 minutes from start to finish.
Wow.
And so I think that's really powerful. And that tells you that's the, eventually it'll be instant. But 36 minutes for a loan broker to compare from start to finish, 90 lenders, including your 90 lenders, and the whole process taking 36 minutes to have the money in your account, and know that you got the best deal that was available in the market, and know that somebody was going to be on the other end of the phone if you needed any support. Have transparency on tracking the loan progress the whole way through. I think that is extremely powerful for a consumer to have access to that, and small business owners as well have access to that too.
Agreed. Okay. Look, Julian, I'm going to thank you so much for spending so much time with us today. Really interesting stuff. Again, really, really great. Thank you again so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Okay, Martin, let's bring in Ben. Looked like there was a little bit of activity there before Ben joined the call. Ben, how are you? I am super duper, man. It's great to have you. You can hear me okay? Good. It's just the way I like it. I feel like my camera's misbehaving today, so if you see me pause, don't worry about it. As long as you can hear me, it's fine. We wanted to have you on because we wanted to get a better understanding about how AI and greater openness about failure can help businesses build more capable founders and more resilient teams. But first, tell us 2 things, Ben. How do we pronounce the name of your company, and what do you guys do?
Pronounce Founder Fuck Ups.
Okay, why do we go there?
Sure. Where do you want to go?
I don't know. Like when you walk into somebody's office, you're like, hey, my name is Ben Bagg and I'm from, that thing. Like, what do you say?
Are you not wanting to say it?
I mean, I just don't know. It's a family-friendly show. I'm just curious.
Maybe I should say. I always get some.
Because look. Even on your T-shirt, what does it say? You have the 2 little dots. Like you don't spell it out.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I say it, but I don't spell it out. Better for, I don't know. SEO.
Anyway, so I'm just kidding around. But so what do you guys do?
Mostly we're trying to create events for founders to come and kind of learn from each other. Like I noticed that every event I go to in the region, sort of 80-90% of founders are kind of saying how amazing things are going.
Yeah.
But actually, they're icebergs, right? There's so much shit going on underneath. And normally it's because they're kind of putting on their PR hat.
Yeah.
We get like 80-90% of these companies are failing. So I wanted to create a space where you're not worried about your investors or getting customers, but instead you're sharing the problems you're going through, and you can help learn from each other, share how you're overcoming mistakes. And so it's kind of like the Alcoholics Anonymous for founders in Southeast Asia.
And how effective is this? In other words, when you're failing, it's pretty hard. There's a lot of sort of societal pressure on guys and gals that are just not succeeding, however you define success, right? And like I feel like they're loath to share, even if there's somebody else in the room. Do you know what I mean? Because part of the problem is like their brother might be the venture capitalist that they're talking to, but you understand, like all these little nuances matter.
No.
How likely are people to really share, and how truthful do you feel like people are? Because at AA, at Alcoholics Anonymous, I've not been to a meeting. Maybe I should go to one. I've never been to one, but if I did go, it'd be really interesting to watch people like talk about that part of their life where they feel like they're not succeeding. Do you know what I mean?
No, I completely get what you mean. I think there's still definitely a bit of posturing happening at our events, but we have about 60 or so founders come at any one time.
Oh wow, it's a lot.
Yeah, and we always start with everybody in the room, one by one, sort of stands up and says, "Hi, my name, and this is my fuck up." And it kind of gets the the people start getting a bit more loosened up. Some people are, humble bragging, but then some people are being a little bit more honest, sharing a mistake that they made. It's not always that your business is collapsing.
Right.
It's just that we're making mistakes and learning from them as we go along. And after that, we then go into the sort of smaller groups where we then try to solve each other's problems. And typically, they're normally people related, to be honest. But it's kind of a group therapy where someone gets to kind of get the spotlight on them about the mistake that they've gone through or the problem that they're facing within the business, the bottleneck. And then the founders around them kind of share ideas and help them solve it.
What is the combination of where like artificial intelligence fits into this, whether during the meeting or after the meeting or before the meeting, to help people prep or to tell their stories or however it fits in, and then in solving it, like and are people actually commenting on like where you need to have AI in your workflow in your companies or how you're succeeding or failing there? Is this a big topic now or not really?
It's a constant topic. In fact, I think where a lot of founders are going wrong, in fact, when it comes to AI, is everybody's implementing something, but they're kind of doing it rather messily. And it's often actually an avoidance, a form of avoidance of dealing with problems. I find that people have this mentality where they want to replace humans with AI because they feel like it's easier, it's faster, they're going to achieve quicker results, when often it's not even the case. I think I'm seeing a lot of founders do a lot of productive procrastination. I was coaching a founding team recently who were like, "Oh yeah, we're going to implement OKRs, so we're going to build our own OKR tool," and they were going to spend weeks building an OKR tool when there's like free ones out there. There's cheap $5 one, like wasting energy where it doesn't need to be placed. So I find that a lot of people are doing productive procrastination with AI.
Where do you think it fits in though? Like because now founders have way more access to sort of decision-making tools that they didn't have even like 6 or 7 months ago, or let's say like 6 to 9 months ago.
Yeah.
How is the founder's role changing when, you know what I mean? Because like a founder really should be, or a CEO in my mind should be just somebody who creates a platform and a way for business to get done and removes roadblocks from people that are trying to accomplish things at a level below them or just below that as well. How does that role change, or does it change at all in a world where AI is just becoming way more prevalent?
I don't think it changes at all. I think you still have to set the context, hold the standards, and ultimately make decisions. I think you're kind of in the AI world now, because there's so much change, so much evolution happening all at once. You kind of have to be a bit of a weather forecaster, right? You have to figure out the direction and make that decision, and that has always been the case. For hundreds of years, the entrepreneur has to make a bet, make a call, make a decision, and make sure that context is well understood across the business, whether you've got 100 employees or 5 AI augmented employees. Nothing really changes there. So I think it's still set the context, hold the standards, and make the calls.
Do you have founders having conversations about the costs of artificial intelligence and trying to reconcile them with each other, in the sense that, like you said, you could have 5 AI agents, but they're not free, right? And they're just not, right? And sometimes it can get very expensive. Do you have some of these sort of, I don't want to use your terminology because I don't like swearing on a family-friendly show, but like, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's just me. Like, I'm just a little bit conservative in that respect, but it doesn't matter to me. But like, when these mishaps occur, are they just like, do you know what I mean? Is there a way for AI to help them disintermediate that kind of stuff, or?
I'm not going to say there isn't. I'm sure.
Do they talk about it? In other words, they'd be like, well, if I just used this or had this prompt or done this thing, then I might not have had that sort of experience.
I don't hear that necessarily in the AI context. I think we always kind of can look back on anything with hindsight. If I had it slightly differently, if I had managed my team differently, if I recruited differently, this definitely comes up. But how we try to kind of direct the founders to go, okay, well, that's what happened. We could have worked differently. How do we then, change the process? How do we change how we operate, so that we're kind of learning from these mistakes, so that we're going for like the 1-2% improvements, rather than trying to suddenly change and become, not human and never make mistakes. But ultimately, whether you pick an AI tool, whether you hire someone, you're going to make mistakes. And I think AI helps guide you through it. But I find that AI is a yes man in many cases when it's used for decision making and ideation. So people have to be really cautious with that. But yeah, it's just the same human errors, whether it's AI or with people, to be honest.
Do you get the sense that founders feel like AI is helping them make better decisions, or just helping them make decisions faster? Do you know what I mean?
I think it's like every founder would answer that question differently. I would look at it as, actually, people are overloaded with new ideas, new decisions. And what I found the biggest problem is that a founder will come up with an idea, maybe some guy on LinkedIn mentioned it, or Claude told them, and they will try it for a week, maybe a couple of days, not even a week. It won't work immediately. They won't get instant gratification. And rather than trying to optimize it, improve it, and get better at it, they just give up and move on to the next idea. And so I think it's like when you go on Netflix, you've got 1 million TV shows to watch.
Right.
Now you've got so many ideas, so many solutions. The problem is that it comes down to execution. And that's where I think people need to really focus on, because AI will give you all the answers, and they'll keep giving you new answers and new ideas. But you've got to roll up your sleeves and get to work and not give up immediately.
Are there certain parts of the execution value chain where founders are starting to feel more comfortable, what's the right word? What's the word I'm looking for? Allowing agents to do that as opposed to having employees do it, and vice versa, just places where they're like, well, I need to have a human involved here, and I'm just always going to have a human involved. Are you hearing stories like this as well, where maybe they've made a mistake of just thinking like, I can automate that thing, and at the end of the day, they couldn't?
Yeah. Actually, the opposite of, so when it comes to sales and marketing, every founder that I work with or deal with are trying to replace people. And I think a lot of the reasons why, and like literally just trust AI and agents. I mean, one of the main reasons why is because, they feel like it's cheaper, more effective, they can control it. But also because they treat sales and marketing a little bit like admin, especially product-led founders, tech-led founders. They kind of look at it as admin. They forget about the psychology of sales.
Yeah.
And what I found is when they start, interacting with founder fuck-ups and myself, we start to talk and realize very quickly that they have to shift back to humans in that space. And so it's where AI, I think, is best leveraged in kind of that back office, non-human facing roles. And we're seeing that time and time again. We had one founder raised significant capital and was looking at creating this entire AI sales agent. And the reason why is because managing people and recruiting and onboarding and training and coaching and mentoring was hard. So it's like, hey, AI can be faster. And the conversion rate dropped dramatically.
The sales conversion rate, yeah.
Yeah. So
why was that? Did they come back and say why?
Well, we realized that it was just the conversation and the product that they were selling was an education product for kids.
Okay.
And the parents are making not just a decision based on, how much money, the budget and things, but it's also an emotional decision, and it's because it's about their child's future. They want to speak to a person, and they want to hear and get ideas, and they want you to remember their kid's name, and they want that to feel very, very human and not just with WhatsApp bot. And we went from sort of a 12% conversion rate with AI to 35% with humans. And so I think founders are going to very quickly realize that you need to keep humans where human to human connection matters. And then you can leverage AI and automation in everywhere else.
Do you see any difference in generations? In other words, maybe you have a bunch of Gen Z, and then, do you know what I mean? Founders and maybe some people that are a little bit older, and that they have a different understanding of the way automation and AI and agentic AI can work for them. Whereas maybe a different cohort, a different age group cohort will just think, whether it's 12% conversion to 35% conversion or not, I need to have humans involved in this because humans make visceral connections with other humans, and it's just more important.
I haven't noticed a generational topic on that, but I don't typically meet many Gen Z founders at this stage.
Okay.
So I don't want to sort of answer for that because I'll be talking out my ass.
No, yeah, let's not do that.
But I hope that everyone sees that human psychology, sales, marketing, it's a very human-centric connection. And if you try to replace it with automation, unless you're selling some form of transactional product, which is kind of perhaps in the impulse purchase territory, I think you're still going to be needing human beings involved. And I hope that every generation realizes that pretty quickly. Otherwise, we're just going to be a bunch of robots selling to a bunch of robots, and it's going to be a pretty sad world that we live in.
I think you're right there. Do we think that this ability for people to share failures is getting easier, or do we just think it's sort of going to remain really difficult unless they find themselves in the right environment? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, in Asia, I think it's going to take quite some time.
Just culturally.
Culturally, yeah. I mean, saving face and all of this. So creating safe environments and being consistent. And that's why we have got the podcast where we try to get one mistake. And I really argue when I'm bringing founders onto our show is it's not about you failing. It's just about you showing one mistake you've made, the impact it caused, and the lesson learned. And I think if we can just keep talking little by little, we'll start to celebrate failure as a proper lesson. And I think that will make a big shift in how startups are running here. I think that's one of the beauties of the startup culture of the US and San Francisco is that they celebrate failure, they learn from it, and they move on and move to the next one.
Yeah.
And I hope we can bring a smidgen of that startup culture here.
How is the podcast going and the ability to tell the stories in a different medium?
It's quite nice. I've tried a variety of pod styles. I quite like this one. We intro a little story about the founder, and then we just ask them a few pointed questions about one thing rather than trying to figure out the entire story. Just like one mistake, one lesson. So it's short, sweet, sort of 25, 30 minutes. I'm really enjoying it. We've done like 24, 25 episodes.
Super.
Every founder agrees, thankfully. No one's sort of going, oh, I don't want to be on there. So that's a good one. And we're actually thinking about doing a an event with some of our founders where we're going to go to an ice bath club, and we're going to say things like, okay, if you're a founder who's hired really fast and fired really slow, 3 minutes in the bath, you know, and like fun stuff like that.
That's not fun, but okay, at least I understand the concept. Sounds more sadistic to me than anything else, but maybe that's just me.
Maybe that's our brand.
I know. I can believe me. I can tell.
We're crazy.
Who do I have to pay off to get a T-shirt? Is really the question I like to ask, but I'm normally only kidding. Okay. Look, Ben, it's great to have you on. I love the energy. I do think, though, it's important for people to understand. Look, one of the things that I've said on this show for years is everyone's an overnight success 10 years later. And I think the way that the media portrays founders in the startup space is just completely upside down, and that there is this sort of celebration of guys and gals that do succeed because it's just easier to tell. It's more comfortable and it's easier to tell that story. But nobody learns anything from that at the same level where they learn something from people that made a bad decision and understand why. And then maybe they've come through to the other side and then they've succeeded. But I think it's better to tell the 10-year story than the 6-month story, because the 6-month story is never true, if that's fair. No,
couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. I think we're just trying to get people okay. We're talking, like, I'm sick of going to events and having, a panel of founders humble brag their way through the content.
Yeah, I can't stand it.
It's just driving me mad. So it's so much nicer to, at least as the host, to have people come and be like, hey, I sucked this week. And that's okay. Like, it's okay that you sucked for a week, you know, like, or made a mistake, or didn't fire someone you wish you did, and hired an idiot that you probably shouldn't have recruited, or said something stupid to a client. It's okay. We make these mistakes, but let's own up to it. Let's not hide behind it.
No, I agree. Okay, man, Ben, I can't believe that's the fastest 20 minutes of my whole life. I really appreciate it. Love the energy. And I like this idea of, like, trying to help walk people through these errors and these mistakes while not sort of getting on people's case about the fact that they suck because they've done this, if that makes sense. Anyway, thanks for your time today, man. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Cheers.
Keep up the good work.
Likewise. See you later.
Thanks. Okay, Martin, let's bring in Dominic. Dominic, how are you? I am super. I'm distracted by the poster behind you that says dream big. I was spending all day today dreaming small, and now I have to, like, change my mindset. I'm not sure what to do, man.
Yeah, I've got to change that.
No, I like it. You should not change it.
No, change your mindset, not the poster.
Exactly.
This thing I used to look at every morning.
Exactly. I was only kidding. But anyway, we want to have you on because we want to talk about how AI-powered content management will help financial institutions build stronger client relationships and improve sales effectiveness. Talk to me a little bit before we get into detail on this about Upscale and the good work that Upscale is doing.
I was going to say,
GoUpscale, excuse me.
How long do we have again, Michael, for that topic?
We have 19 minutes and 47 seconds, but take as much time as you want. Actually, for you, we have, like, I don't know, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Take however much time you want.
No, I'm joking. It's
no, but go for it. Go for it.
There's a few topics in there that I could wax lyrical on. Let's get Upscale. Been going for about 4 years. We're a technology company based here in Asia, Singapore and Bangkok. And it's my best thinking, having been in the industry for 24 odd years, about 10 of which as a private banker. And my co-pilot, Ben Bax's best thinking, who comes from the technology side, deep inside of the basements of the big banks of the world over the last 15, 20 years, around what wealth and asset management needs to get more relevant, Michael. The industry is just still so behind the times when it comes to how it engages with its audience.
Right.
The shop window, it's still 1980s. Occasionally a pair of flares crop up in the window. It's still incredibly out of date. And we built it and continue to build, of course, a range of solutions that help organizations, large and small, to adopt technology, deep or shallow, quick or long projects that really help drive more engagement with internal salespeople, as well as prospects and clients. So,
but Dominic, walk us through and walk our viewers and our listeners through, why content management, content creation actually ends up being so important in the context of wealth management or financial services and stuff like that. I mean, you and I have been talking about this for, God, almost a decade. So I'm trying, like, I understand why, but tell people why, like, they need to be able to sort of visualize some, do you know what I mean? And understand why content is important in the context of the stuff that you're doing on the wealth management, financial management side.
I mean, look, a couple of things, Michael. So storytelling in sales has been around since day one, right? If you want to be a good salesperson, you got to be able to storytell. And storytell relevant to your audience. And that is something that the industry, just basic 101 sales relationship management stuff, hasn't done particularly well for quite a long time. And in fact, we then get into conversations around bad sales practices and product pushing. And it's interesting to debate the word sales in wealth management, because you go to one of the conferences and it's a swear word, right? You can't say that a private banker, a financial advisor is a salesperson.
Because
we don't sell product. You know, we advise on solutions. That's what they say. But look, whatever the stance is on that, right? Whether you're doing good, whether you're doing bad.
Fair enough.
The bottom line is any business that is driving revenue is in the business of sales, right? So I call them salespeople. We can call them whatever they want. But over the last, 10, 15 years in particular, the average punter, right, whether they're 25, 45, and now 65 and 75, have drastically changed how they consume content. And when I say content, it could be my mum reading the newspaper every day, all the way down to our industry on how someone wants to consume a little financial tip for the day, right? And we've got social media drivers in there. We've got digital asset revolution in there. All these forces underneath that are changing the way that people consume content. And I selectively say this word audience, because when it comes to what we do in the industry, the audience isn't just the client. It's the person sitting inside of the organization who might be one of these salespeople, a relationship manager or an advisor. They too are exactly the same. They don't want long emails. They don't want huge, massive PDFs. They're just not going to consume it, right? So the industry still, for various reasons, some good, some not so good, just hasn't kind of been able to ride the wave. And so are, in many people's minds, increasingly out of date. They're the relative sitting around the table that doesn't really get the new generation, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say there's a generational shift here as well. But even so, like, you know, your mom still wants to hear a good story when someone's trying to sell her a financial product as well. I do think that that's true. But why does, and I'm curious here, right? Because most of my work in the financial services industry was really like B2B. It was institution to institution. We didn't have Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs. We didn't do a lot of individual investor sales, which is just not something that we did, right? We spoke to gigantic fund managers and maybe some of their potential clients. Are those companies as well getting involved in this game where they're now trying to provide better content to generate meaningful client engagement for those types of clients as well? Or is this more of a B2C business or I don't want to say retail, right? Because wealth management itself is, sometimes you're dealing with guys and gals with $100 million. That's not retail investing, but it's not institutional investing either. I'm just curious, like, where this is happening and where it's meant to happen in a way that's actually effective and engaging.
The engagement word goes with the term audience, right? And audience isn't just B2C. Audience is now B2B. Because if you're in asset management and you're doing institutional sales and you're selling to a pension fund, that guy or girl is probably in their 30s or 40s who you're selling to. And they too don't want to receive a freaking long email with a 50-page PDF because they've got an email inbox that is overflowing. They won't give it the attention that you want it to give. And the staggering thing, I'm going off on a tangent, Michael. The staggering thing is the manufacturing engine inside of these organizations who are producing content is huge, right? It's huge in terms of the number of people. And yes, AI is inevitably going to impact that, but it's huge in terms of cost. They're well-educated, mature adults who are writing research reports every day, who are originating product. So extremely costly. But when that is distributed down into the sales force and or the client base, in 9 out of 10 organizations, there is zero tracking, zero understanding as to how that content performs. I don't know an industry like this where you produce stuff and you keep on producing it.
Yeah.
That they were producing it 24 years ago when I was sitting on the sales desk at DLJ, for anybody who remembers that acronym.
Donaldson, right? Lufkin, and Jenrette, by the way, for those of you scoring at home. Go ahead.
It's the same research.
But can I ask you this, Dominic? Why hasn't it changed? Right? Because I'm thinking in my head about like the research department at any of the firms where I worked. Those guys got paid a ton of money.
Still do.
And even back then, and it was a while ago, I didn't really believe that anybody was reading all that research.
Yeah. Well, indeed. And I think that on the institutional side, for sure, there are analysts who absolutely need that level of detail.
Yeah, but it was separate. And again, tell me if you think I'm wrong, right? In the sense that you had a research analyst at, let's say, Goldman Sachs writing something about, I don't know, Yahoo Japan, just because I was in Japan, yeah? And then that research analyst would give it to a salesperson. So now there's already one degree of separation. That salesperson then would give it to their coverage at BGI, at Barclays, or at at BlackRock.
Yeah.
And then that BlackRock person who received it would be like, I'm not reading this. I'm giving this to my intern or my new college hire. And then that person would read it and summarize it like they were AI today. And we'll get to that in a second. And then feed it back into that person who may make an investment decision based on that thing. But I was never convinced that the guy who was the fund manager was pouring through research reports. Yeah? Do I have that wrong?
I don't think you do have it wrong. And I think, if anything, it's got worse in terms of the proportion of the recipient base who are actually consuming this stuff beyond the first paragraph.
Right.
AI now, as we'll get to, is, I can't believe we've gone in about 10 minutes, Michael, and that's the first time we've mentioned AI.
How good am I, by the way?
This is good. So what I think, look, to answer your question, why has it not evolved quicker? There are a couple of nuanced answers to that, as always in wealth and asset management, right? It is the most weird and wonderful collective industry that's out there. We can't go much further without talking about regulations.
Go ahead.
I spend a lot of time in North America, and indeed have aspirations for our business to grow in that market. And we laugh about disclaimers at the end of content here in Asia and in Europe. Does anyone read them? In North America, it's off the charts, right? I mean, the disclaimers are 5 times longer than they are here in Asia. Right. And no one reads them. No. And it's therefore, it goes very deep into larger organizations in particular. The fear factor of doing wrong in the eyes of the regulator, who, as always, as we know, never really give black and white prescriptive advice as to what you should and shouldn't do as a content producer. But the interpretation then from the organizations always goes to the most risk-off place. So there's a lot of that going on. But I think more interestingly for me, because I do believe that you can harness that, I refuse to think, maybe it's as an entrepreneur, but that's not the sole blocker why you can't produce more short-form content. And indeed, there are some banks out there who are producing some pretty decent short-form content, just not that many right now. But to my final point on this, Michael, and I quote my friend Seb Dovey, who some of you will know from the UK, sold a business to SEI in the US. He said, the industry just hasn't woken up to the fact that they're actually content publishers, right? And this goes back to the storytelling. Storytelling is just so intrinsic in what this industry does, whether it's selling a grandma an insurance policy, or whether it's B2B institutional sales, trying to sell a pension fund your new private market strategy. It's telling a story. And the story is backed up, maybe verbally by a salesperson, but it's backed up by content. And they just haven't clocked on quick enough that content's got to be in a much more modern format to engage.
So what's it going to take to get, I just don't see, Goldman Sachs producing TikTok videos or YouTube shorts. But maybe they should, because there are plenty of people that are engaging with their business that spend, I wouldn't say a lot of time, but enough time on YouTube, and they're searching for things on YouTube and trying to understand. And from a storytelling perspective, like the guy that I like to use as a good example of this is just Masayoshi Son, right? The guy from SoftBank. That's going, it's the biggest thing we've ever done. I mean, Steve Jobs was really good at this. But there are plenty of other people in the investment business who've been very good at it. What's it going to take for some of the bigger firms because you're right, they're creating content constantly, but I feel like they're creating the wrong content. What's it going to take for them to create the right content? I don't feel like the regulations get in the way, because it's very easy to take a research report and break it into 15 little pieces and make it cooler to interact with, I would think. But what do you think? Like, what's it going to take to have this content be more engaging, but also have it be shorter and sharper, like all the kind of stuff that you think in modernized? Yeah.
Well, I mean, on the summarization and chopping down of content, pretty much anybody can do it now. Whether it's industry compliant, it's one thing. You can add on a disclaimer at the back, that's fine. But I think, to my point around kind of culture inside of these organizations, you can give these people tools, whether it be an LLM or something else that produces short content. Where they then come a cropper is on design and how the content looks and feels.
Right.
And this is a key skill set. I was having a debate with someone the other day about this term private banking, and how he was saying that he thinks it's going to be extinct, and how I'm saying I think it's just another form of luxury. It doesn't really offer anything different to maybe a different form of banking, but it's a luxury good. And that again comes down to how it's packaged, right? So you think of a luxury brand, think of LVMH's brands, think of Hermes. It's all about the branding and the marketing.
Yeah.
But our industry still, with very, very few exceptions, they can't package the stuff in a beautiful way. They can now get the words, right? So they now can use the LLMs to actually say something engaging, and they can fine tune that tone of voice. The next problem they're going to have is how it looks and feels. And you watch some of the short form content that is produced, and some of it is good, to be fair. A lot of it is cringeworthy or cringe.
Well, yeah, because they're trying to take, here's the problem, I think, in some ways, or at least one of the problems, and that is, and I will tell you two stories actually after this, but one of the issues is that they're trying to take the same people that have been writing like this very conservative, traditional content and saying, okay, now go on to TikTok. And I'm using TikTok as just an extreme example, right? But you could produce YouTube videos that are just related to this. But there's another thing happening internally, okay? And again, tell me if you're experiencing this as well. But like if you look at my LinkedIn profile, let me just make sure it's still there. Sorry, give me 1 second because I want to make sure that it still says this. View my own profile. Yeah, I mean, I used to write at the top here that every company should be their own media company. You and I have spoken. You've heard me say this for years.
Yep.
But the point is that internally, here's what you have, and I'm going to do this at scale, right? So, I'm going to summarize a little bit and simplify it. You have a product team, okay? You have a sales team, you have a public relations team, and then you have a comms team. And they're all in conflict with each other, right? Because the product team may not be creating the right stuff that the sales team wants to sell. The sales team may have ideas about products that the product team can't create for some reason, who knows what. The PR team creates like this overall, how are we going to relate to the public and let them know what's going on, mostly from the CEO was just involved in some kind of scandal thing, so we have to fix that. But also a branding thing where the comms team is like, the products that you're building and the way you're selling it doesn't fit into our comms team, and they don't want external help. I know this as a fact because we've tried to do it. And when you're working with all these 4 teams, you're just like, you know what? Never mind. I'll leave this for you guys to figure out, because we know how to tell stories.
Yeah.
And you're just like tripping over yourselves and stepping on rakes all day trying to figure out, how does our branding work with our storytelling, work with our sales team that also works with our product team? I'm just curious what you're seeing.
Cultural issues, Michael, and I'm trying to think of an organization where I can praise them for changing the culture around.
Yeah, I was hoping you had an example of something that was working and tell me why.
Look, you can point to some of the so-called scale-ups, if not already scaled, like a Revolut, where it's somewhat different. But you look at the old guard, I can't think of an organization where they've solved that internal conflict, as you said.
Yeah.
And I can't think of an organization, an old organization, not a newer tech-enabled one, where the skill sets of the marketing team are much more in line with a different, faster moving technology, AI based industry.
Agreed.
It's all the same. We go into Singapore, Asia's home of wealth management, and whilst the marketing teams are perfectly qualified in their own right, for this topic that we're talking about, it's still a very caricatured, stereotyped profile of age, gender, who is running those divisions, and it's just not in their skill set, bless them. It's just not, this is not their backyard. And coming from all the way upstairs in the boardroom, they're not getting it either. And I'm talking about a particular segment of the market here, but what is going to make them change was your question earlier. And the only thing, a lot of people out there going, oh, it's going to be extinct. The industry's dead. It's going to disappear.
Yeah, it's not. But
I highly disagree with that.
Agreed with you.
It's here to stay. It's going to change shape, and there are going to be forces that are pulling it. Indeed, there are today, but not very hard, pulling it to change shape with increasing strength over the next 5, 10, 15 years. And it's all to play for those who can move quicker. Now, there's one thing we've got to remember, which is the average client in wealth management, right? Not retail, not even mass affluent, in upper mass aff, high net worth, ultra high net worth. The average age of these clients is still a lot older than you think it is.
Is it?
But it's 60s, and depending on organizations, can be shockingly old. Right now, that in itself is an issue. If I were running one of those businesses, my goodness, next gen wealth transfer, we need to evolve. And that's, look, one of the excitements that Ben and I have in Upscale, right? That we're kind of in the right place over the medium term to position ourselves like that debate. But when this wealth transfer really starts to pick up momentum, it's already started, but over the next 10 years, they are going to be forced to take some action, hopefully in this area, because they are going to have massive revenue pressure, Michael. And, we see all these cycles, in our time in the industry. And I distinctly see it again, whether it be life insurance, where I'm sitting right now in Thailand, whether it be private banking, everyone's looking at revenue again. All those people who were talking about holistic advisory solutions and ethics, all have gone back very much to product pushing right now, revenue targets. Nothing moves this industry like revenue, right? Yeah. Cost base, is a given that's under some kind of strain. I will cite something interesting from last week, which is that DBS in Singapore, the mighty DBS Private Bank last week had record results. Okay, that is a new school, old school wealth management organization that has private bank in the brand name on the plate outside the front door, and they've never done so well. So it's all to play for. As I often say to people who say, oh, the banks are dead. The banks have the vast majority of the asset base right now. 8 years ago, you and I are sitting around talking about robo-advisors, right? Oh, robo-advisors, the telecoms companies are going to be their own wealth managers because they can have portfolio allocation technology. Didn't happen. No one really liked robo-advisors. You can't sell to the client base to come into a robo-advisor very easily. It costs a lot of money. The banks still, whether we like it or not, have control, and they're still not feeling the pure pressure in most cases to make the evolution yet that we want to see.
So what do you do? What does GoUpscale do? And what kind of tools do you build? And then how do you do sales? And you must tell stories, of course, to do this, to convince some of these financial services companies that they're telling the wrong stories and that they're producing the wrong content, and that if their customers are more engaged, look, I mean, as soon as you said to me, like, guess the age of people that are wealth management clients, I was like going right to a 6 handle for sure. Because even the guys and gals that are rich that say we're transferring our wealth to our sons and daughters, you don't get to be 65 years old and have enough money to do a wealth transfer being like a passive dude. Like, that's not the way this works. And if your dad gives you $200 million, he's not like, have fun, Junior, I'm going to go home to Bali for a while. He's going to be standing over your shoulder going, don't mess this up. So how are you handling all of these like little nuances and then helping them create content so that the next generation, you're right, which is way more interested in seeing a story and buying a thing as opposed to seeing a product and buying that thing?
Michael, look, I don't know whether you're used to your guests giving you a whole load of bravado. I won't. It's bloomin' difficult, right? Remind me when you and I have a chat in a few years' time, never to do another software company in this industry ever.
I'll remind you, yeah.
Please, it is really difficult. Now,
It is hard.
my business view, and fortunately Ben is of the same mindset, is that we've got a long-term play, right? This is not much to the annoyance of VC and PE people when we see them. This ain't hockey stick. Wealth management related businesses, you ain't getting hockey stick. I read a great little clip from Ned Phillips the other day on LinkedIn around his buddy, who I know, who runs or founded one of the biggest wealth management tech companies of all time, a Goliath, still going today, over 100 million of ARR. It took them 10 years to get to $1 million of ARR.
But you know like I've said this, and I said this to our previous guest, but like one of the things that I say all the time that I'll continue to say all the time is everyone's an overnight success 10 years later. So like when I do talk to you in 6 years, it'll be 10 years in or close to a decade in, and then you'll be like, hey, now we have whatever the RR is, but you'll be like, now you're going to be successful. And people will be like, see how easy it was for Dominic to just like wake up one day and have, you know what I mean? It's not the way it works.
No, it's not the way it works. So listen, we're doing all right, but we're going to do a lot better, but it's going to take time. And to your point of how do we actually do this, it's a multi-pronged approach because, again, to this wonderful, nuanced industry, you've got SMEs, right? You've got independent wealth managers. You've got wealth management ecosystem businesses, ultra high net worth insurance brokers with 20 to 200 people in their business. Very small. The way that you have to sell to them is totally and utterly different to the way that you would sell to one of the big private banks that we've mentioned.
For sure.
And you know, we are a small organization, so we have to double hat, triple hat on our kind of strategy. We don't have partner sales channels and enterprise sales team versus SME sales team, but you've just got to be incredibly experienced, frankly. Warning to any young Jack or Jill out there who wants to start a wealth tech business and they're in their 20s. You do have to be very experienced because you will just walk into door after door.
Yeah.
But you've got to have some luck, of course. But I think that one of the key advantages we have is that what we do and what we say is our business, right? Engagement.
Yep.
So when I walk in there with a funky sales deck and it's all, you know, cool animations and bits of video in the background as we've been doing since day one, they almost kind of want to see the show. They want to see that. And I have this phrase with my team of, I want one of those. It's not an industry for the reasons we said before with this kind of structural, cultural stuff. They don't necessarily know how to do this. They don't know what they want. So we have to go in a little bit of the dancing circus monkey and show them the art of the possible. Right. The other thing we've done is we didn't start doing content generation where we can transform long form content into cool industry compliant, brand compliant formats. That came with the AI revolution. We started with sales enablement. That's still the core of what we do. Sadly, not a phrase that is particularly well known on this side of the world yet, but it's very much a line item inside of tech budgets in North America. And that is equipping sales teams with content in a much more accessible, easy to digest, easy to access place. Sounds ridiculous. Oh, I've got SharePoint. Why do I need that? No one freaking wants to use SharePoint if you're a salesperson.
No, it's so hard.
Right deck. There's no story that's being told to a salesperson by going into SharePoint, right? So sales enablement is a big thing. It's a big trend coming to this side of the world in any sales related business. Doesn't really matter what industry you're in, but also in wealth and asset management. So we have, as one of my investors calls it, multiple shots on goal, but it's all with this engagement thread going through the middle.
So one of the things we talked about earlier was the average age of a wealth management client, which is in their 60s, let's say. But how does that translate into the age of the wealth management sales team on average? Because I don't suspect that a 65-year-old guy wants to deal with a 27-year-old sales guy.
Yeah, big problem, not just for us, but for any tech business. You know, you think
well, for any business, to be fair, but we're talking about tech, so fair enough. But it's more likely that 27-year-old guy is going to be like, hey, you know, we could do some pretty cool content around this IPO that we're doing. Do you know what I mean? So how do you balance those things out where from a content engagement standpoint or a client engagement standpoint, your natural audience is the younger kind of salesperson and yet they're dealing with an older kind of client.
Look, it's not secret sauce, but we love organizations where there is a go-getter stakeholder. Probably not in their 20s, right? But in their 30-something with the ear of the senior buyers, the CEO, whoever it may be. And that's the dream profile, because that's the individual who gets it. To where you're going with this, if you walk into a private bank today, assuming they're all in the office, which is unlikely, a huge proportion, Michael, are going to be well over 40, 45. And you are going to get, I was talking to one of my buddies in Hong Kong who's hiring somebody at the moment who's in the sunset of her career, right? 6-something, as a private banker, moving now to another wealth manager. That lady in question, she ain't using any tech. She doesn't want In fact, tech is her enemy because it almost devalues her. She just wants her contacts close to her. She doesn't want to have to put it into a CRM. So we got this whole weird and wonderful, again, nuanced situation going inside of these organizations where you've got the 20-somethings sitting in an office who are not allowed to use ChatGPT, but of course they are on their personal devices.
For sure.
Not allowed to use WhatsApp. Of course, they're all using WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And then you've got the older one who doesn't want to use any tech whatsoever and just wants to be on the phone doing what they do best with their 10 old clients. This is very much private banking, less affluent.
I understand.
It's all sorts of age dynamics, audience engagement dynamics going on.
So one of the things you said earlier was that a lot of these financial services companies are producing content and they don't know how to measure its effectiveness. Do you know what I mean? How do you create in this age? And think about it. We still have not mentioned AI. I have to ask you this in a moment. But how do you create the right level of analytics or the right analytics so that you can say to people, if you create this content, you'll get this engagement, and that will help you improve your ROI?
Yeah. I mean, this is where I'm lucky to have Ben, right? Because he is Mr. Analytics. And the bottom line is you've got to capture deep. You've got to capture every freaking analytic. What time did Michael go onto this piece of content? How far did he go down the page? What time did he come off? When did he go back again? So you've got to have the data pool there that gives you every freaking dimension you can imagine. But it's then what you do with that and how you surface it to the, let's call it the salesperson, right? You're not going to give that level of detail to the salesperson. What you're going to say is, hey, Michael, your client's really engaged with that document, and he or she keeps on going back to page 5. That's the fee page, right? Give them a call. That's the sort of level of detail that they need. So what you surface up to a user is different to what you capture underneath. You got to capture everything. A great irony with this, Michael, and this is the regulatory barriers that we have in the industry today. In order to capture analytics on you, the client, let alone you, the salesperson, I've got to capture your digital behavior.
You need my permission as well, probably. Yeah.
A whole other, quagmire to get into that for sure. How do I capture a client's activity? There are 2 ways to do it, right? I capture them on a URL, right? So I send a link and I see your behavior on that link, like tracking you on a website. Or I send you something inside of my lovely ring-fenced environment, which is my client app. So I send you a notification to the client app and I watch your behavior through that. Client apps, not everybody has, and certainly not everybody has good ones.
Right.
Perpetual bugbear of this industry, because we move so much slower to other industries or even other players like Revolut. We're always catching up. So the link is the easy, common one. Many a business, and I'm thinking of Dropbox, DocSend, right? And us at Upscale, same thing, make a business out of saying, send links, track all the engagement. But here's the irony. The irony is that the regulators in many countries, particularly out here in Asia, do not allow financial institutions to send links to clients. When you look at your EDMs, if you're a client of, let's say, HSBC or Standard Chartered, they go out of their way to avoid any links for all the phishing and spam and stuff that goes on in the industry. So this is the problem, right? And this, when people look into this industry and go, why is it so behind? Why is it so bad? There are actually genuinely restrictive policies out there that just don't make it as easy as other industries, right? If you can't send a link, you can't track. If you can't track, you can't personalize. Where do we go from here? Everyone wants more tailored recommendations. The industry just sends me all this crap that's not relevant to me. But then I need your data, right? So how am I going to get it?
How do we fix that though, right? Because you're right. I think most people don't want the same just kind of cookie cutter information from their advisor or from their salesperson. And yet the regulators are telling you on the flip side, you can't get their personal data unless they agree to it. And because they're so skeptical about giving personal data, particularly like the younger you are, the more likely you are to just be like, I don't care. you know me anyway. But the older you are, 45, 60, 55, 65, they're like, hey, I'm not giving you my data. And I'm not going to click on a link anyway, even if you do send me one, because I've been phished before. Like I've had people that I've just invited, just so you know, we have people that we invite on the show, okay, that literally reach out to me and go, is this you that's sending me that kind of thing? And I'm like, yeah, it's definitely me. Like, what's the problem? They're so skeptical, even if it comes from someone they know.
100%. When I have the answer to that question, I'll be rich, Michael.
Call me back,
be on the podcast. We'll be on the beach. It's a really tricky one, right? And the regulator would then say, we'll have a 2FA, secure environment through which you interact with your client. But here in the next problem, that involves a big technology project. That involves not only caboodles of money, but it's time. You go into one of these banks and there's got parallel work streams of these never-ending projects like this, and nothing ever really gets done properly. And then a new CEO comes in and he or she then slashes everything. So it's really tricky. I think it's one of the reasons we're very happy that we're kind of in a very sort of quick delivery part of the market, and we can go deep, with data integrations and stuff in due course, but you can also start to use our software in days. I have a lot of experience, as you know, in CRM, and it's the opposite of that. And those projects, I think, are increasingly difficult to sell into organizations because there's just so much reticence. There's a graveyard of these sorts of projects around. The industry, long story short, and I don't believe the regulator is the solution, right? We can't all get the regulator out for a couple of drinks and have a chinwag, right? It doesn't work like that either. So I don't think we're going anywhere fast on this stuff. Phishing is getting worse. Data privacy across the board is getting worse. And it's really interesting, your example before, the 60-year-old won't agree to sending their data out. Here's one of the ironies we have with AI again, which is that the more you tell a client about what's going to happen to their data, the less, of course, they're going to agree to it.
For sure.
And then you've got the wonderful metas of this world, right? And this is a conversation for off air. Where, I mean, God almighty, what is happening to your data on these sorts of platforms? That, it's on page 350 of the legal disclaimer. You haven't read that in the settings menu? Of course not. So it's a very two-track, maybe unfair, sort of playing field for the financial industry. And you got Revoluts of this world who have found ways to accelerate in this muddy playing field. I can only imagine the bigger they get, certainly the more upstream they go in terms of wealth, it gets muddier. But for the incumbents, it's really, really tricky.
So one more thing, and then I'll let you go. This is a big thing. I'm curious about this. What we see on our side is a lot of the big, and this is separate from financial services, but I'm curious how this bleeds over, if it does at all. Salesforce, Stripe does a world tour. Salesforce does a world tour. Boomi does a world tour. All of these companies go to, they go to New York. They go to San Francisco. They go to probably Miami. They come to Bangkok, they go to Sydney, they go to Singapore, they go to somewhere in Europe, and then they go to Riyadh, and they just do content around their companies. Are we going to get to a point where financial services companies and wealth managers, particularly the bigger ones, are going to do world tours as well, not to sell any specific product, but to create content? Because that's what these big companies are doing, right? Like, I forget their last name, I always mention them, but the Colston brothers, the founders of Stripe, go to Stripe sessions in all these countries to tell stories. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is, do you think we're going to get to a point where storytelling is going to bleed down into like the individual desks and that each individual salesperson is now going to end up being their own storyteller, and they're going to have the right infrastructure and the right capabilities and the right software to be able to go out and tell this in a way that can have, can be approved, is regulatory correct, and all this other stuff.
Sure. I mean, and that's our sales pitch, Michael, for sales enablement, right? The salesperson at his or her fingertips on a great device, looking great on the screen, stories relevant to their client with a click of a button, and whether that's just for them to read and then share over the phone or just send out via a mobile app or a link. That is the sales enablement engagement piece. To your first point, are we going to get to this stage where brands are going on world tours? I come back to this luxury branding positioning, which I'm really for my, dare I say it, passion in this industry, and I'm too far in to get out now. So you're going to be seeing me around the block for a lot longer. That's the way to go for. And we haven't spoken about some of your backyard here, life insurance, which, different when you go down the food chain.
Yep.
But at the top of the food chain, private banking, multifamily office, absolutely, they need to get much more with a luxury brand lens. And that includes storytelling, that includes look and feel and visuals and brand marketing. Because fundamentally, I go back to, Hermes, do I need to go and buy a $20,000 handbag to hold my personal belongings to take me to the office or to dinner tonight?
Definitely.
The answer really is no. Should I go to Zara? Definitely. Should I forget the investment angle? That's a different topic.
I got it.
What's the difference between that as a product of what it does versus me going down to Zara over the road there and buying a $20 handbag? Yeah. Nothing. They both do the same.
Really. Yeah.
Quality, sure. But fundamentally, pretty much the same kind of thing.
Yep.
When I go to no particular names here, but DBS Private Bank versus JP Morgan Private Bank versus LGT, blah, 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 blah. Fundamentally, and this is one of the big bugbears I get into on every interview, over the last 20 years, the industry has become incredibly homogenized. Regulatory pressures have been one of the big factors of that, but they really kind of offer the same thing. It's very much about the salesperson and that relationship, but it's about the branding too. Yeah. If I'm going to go down to the Mercedes garage versus the BMW garage versus the Audi garage, it's branding that is getting me in the chest that I want to have that badge when I turn up to the golf club, whatever it is.
Right?
But same stuff. And I don't really care. It's not about, luxury brands are going to be dead in 20 years because the next gen. No. It's all about partnerships. Look at Swatch and Audemars Piguet and Louis Vuitton and all the cool cartoon. They will still appeal to a 25-year-old digital asset millionaire as much as they will a 65-year-old man. So it's luxury, it's branding. These organizations somehow, to your point on culture, I don't know how, we need dynamic CEOs coming in, have got to start to implement that down the chain. And my God, I would love to be around when some of the big organizations do that, because I am convinced they are going to go head and shoulders above other organizations. Goldman's have always had that cachet, right? And in Goldman's Wealth Management, they have gone head and shoulders, albeit very quietly, against other competitors, JP to a degree. But some of these others have got to clock onto it. And what's to stop JP Morgan doing a tour of Singapore, Bangkok, Hong Kong, telling stories?
Nothing.
Except the way it's done today, and I won't name the brand, but I went to one of their Bangkok soirees for their clients where the CIO, who is great in that instance, but stands up and tells the story about the market. That stuff has got to change, right? All these private banks do these quarterly, semi-annual, and honestly, you go there in Singapore to these events, Michael, and it's people just having free food.
Don't get me started on this because I can go on.
They don't even listen to the content because content's boring.
They don't care. Yeah.
Okay, and it's the wrong profile anyway. You got clients turning up because they want free food.
Exactly. Free drinks probably more likely than the free food, but fair enough.
Anyway, we digress. But look, it's coming. I hope I can be on that wave, helping, supporting organizations to make that move in that direction. I think we're getting there. It's just, I'll have a few more gray hairs by the time we're
at least you have hair. This is the way you should look at it. Dominic, thank you so much for spending so much time with us. It was supposed to be 20 minutes. That was 44 minutes. So
just getting
thanks for that, man.
Don't leave me.
I've got a guest waiting, but thank you so much for doing this. Love to have you back. It's always great to talk to you, man.
You too. Cheers, Michael.
Thank you. Bye for now. Okay, Martin, let's bring in Siraj. Siraj, how are you doing today? You are muted, man. There you go. Don't be sorry. It's great. It's great to have you. It's great to see you there. We wanted to have you on because obviously founder at Gilver.ai. We want to have you on to talk about how visual market intelligence will help investors and financial businesses understand market movements and make better informed decisions. But tell us a little bit first about Gilver, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper.
Hello.
Can you do that? Can you tell me a little bit more about Gilver?
Right. But can I get your name first? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah. My name is Michael.
Nice to meet you, Michael. It's an absolute pleasure being here. So Gilver.ai is a market intelligence and visualization platform. So what we do is we render the financial markets, the capital markets as explorable 3D worlds. So imagine your RSI, imagine your MACDs, imagine your tickers, all the technicalities that's out there. We render them as live 3D objects. So that's what we do, Michael.
How does it change the way people see and interact with the market? In other words, if I'm looking at a candlestick chart or a chart or an RSI chart, like why do I need this to be in like 3 dimensions? Why do I need to have it feel like it's moving and alive and stuff like that? Like what's the difference for me from a visualization, but also from a market understanding standpoint about what that's actually providing to me as a guy who used to be in the market all day, every day?
So I feel like the audience changes as generations progress.
For sure.
So I think the generations become more unserious with time. So you see President Trump, you see President Obama or President Bush. Who do you think was more serious? I
don't want to talk about politics. It's just not.
Just an example. So this is just my.
Wait a second though. But don't you feel like your parents' generation were like, oh, kids these days was like the thing that they were always saying. But then you'll have kids and you'll just be like, oh, kids these days, and you'll be like, your parents will be standing behind you going, do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't think in particular you can generalize. Just me.
Right.
Thinking because I was way more serious than my parents were for sure, and God, 1,000 times more serious about life and work than my grandparents were. I don't think we can generalize about that. But here's what I do think we know is that we live in a world that's way more visual than it used to be. And I want to try to get an understanding of if I look at a heat map or if I look at an RSI chart or a stochastic chart and I'm trading, what other types of visual cues can I get? Do you know what I mean? Because normally I'd have to look at it, and I did this, okay? When I traded treasuries, I literally charted every single day, the 2-year note, the on the line, the on the run 2-year note, the 5-year note, the 10-year note, and the 30-year bond. We didn't do so much the 1-year bill because it didn't matter that much. It didn't move that much. But we would actually use a pencil to draw lines on the chart that we wrote to see like resistance and support points. But if you can do that in real time and create trading signals and then visualize that stuff, and frankly, then if you can automate that into, if you agree with this trading signal and you visualize it in a way that makes sense to you, then you can automatically trade. Well, now you're talking my language. I'm just curious, like how you see this evolving or how it's already evolved and what type of benefits it's giving to people more than just the mere visualization of it, which is cool.
Right. So, Michael, I think you explained everything that I was just going to say. So you were drawing charts, you were drawing with your, hello?
Should we just go home? I mean, go ahead.
Yeah. But Michael, I think you just said everything that I was going to say anyway. But like you were drawing charts on a paper, what we do is we've not just like we've made the markets more interactive. A lot of things I cannot disclose here and how we do it, but we've figured a way to gamify the markets. I think the capital markets is the last standing industry that remains to be gamified. So it's not been simplified yet. There's lots of technicalities and jargons and whatnots out there in the industry. But a lot of that information, what we figured as a company and as a team, can be gamified, can be simplified, can be put out in such a way that not only institutions but market entrants or individuals or retailers are able to understand how markets perform or function. Michael.
So how interactive is it in the sense that if I look at one of your market visualizations, there's AI in the name of your company, right?
Right.
Is there an LLM behind this where if let's say I'm using one of your visualization tools, that I can then chat with something in the background, some other, something or some agent that you've created in the background that says, okay, well, if this is the case,
right,
what types of trades would have made me money based on what types of signals in the past, and then how can I translate that into how I should trade in the future? So I can get a better sense of what benefits do I have from all this technology, particularly the artificial intelligence stuff.
Right. So, Michael, that was right on point. So what we do is, we're not an artificial intelligence company right now. Like we're still in the development phase. We're still pre-launch. Before we become an AI company, we need the data. Where is the data? We cannot be an AI company without processing data.
Sure.
Without automating stuff that we want to automate. So the first year as a company, as a team, we're just going to display market information in its most simplest visual output. And the second year, that's going to be our second phase. That's when we will bring artificial intelligence into conversation. So that's what we're going to do, Michael. So let me ask you something. Since you've been in the markets for so long, how do you know if capital is moving from let's say from precious metals to stocks or to crypto? Is there a way to do it?
It's a good question. So that's if you just look at the one note that I just wrote here, it's money flows. It was the next thing I was going to ask you. But also there's two things that I wanted to ask you: money flows, but also sentiment, right? And like online sentiment around the markets as the markets move, as FX rates change, as interest rates maybe change, as the Fed moves or the BOJ moves, or as rumors around. Like, how do you consolidate all that? Because to be fair, I don't know the money flows. I don't know until tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? But I want to know now. So you're right that if I knew what the money flows were, or if I could anticipate what the money flows were, or if I could project what they were, right, using artificial intelligence, that I would be a much better trader. But tell me about how you consolidate all that information, because then I want to ask you one more thing after that about all this consolidated info. Yeah. How do you do that?
So, Michael, there's it's been it's been 30 years of internet. And imagine those 30 years, how much data the internet has collected, how much information is just out there. And part of the challenge is not just access to that information, but the challenge is access to clean information, clean financial information.
If I can trust, yeah.
Right. So to relevant information that we can collect, that we can process, that we can actually use, that we can actually provide value with. So that's what we as a business have figured how to get that clean information and provide real value to our customers. Now, let me give you an example. There are companies that show capital flow, that there are market visualization products that display simpler market information. For example, there's Bloomberg Terminal, there's Lipper, but the problem with these companies is that they're too expensive. I think they're
like Bloomberg, but yeah, they are too expensive.
Right, like $2,000 a month for me as a person just to get access to some real financial information, so that I, as an individual, can get rich. Like, why the barrier? Or do I need $24,000 a year to get rich, to get access to clean information?
$20,000 a month for a Bloomberg terminal if the prices are still the same. But yeah, go ahead.
Right. So I think that's what we are tackling. We're not Bloomberg Terminal per se, but we are half the Bloomberg Terminal, half of what Bloomberg Terminal currently is, with much cheaper. Almost, I think it's we're providing our value for free.
How do you get data that's clean enough? And frankly, like, how do you afford it? And then how do you separate the signals, the trading signals, from the noise?
So a lot of that is proprietary. A lot of our models that we've built to do that, to do what you just mentioned, is proprietary. And I myself, not being a coder, not an engineer, so I do not have hands-on information. So what I did here in this team was provide vision. So but ultimately it was our team, the engineering team, who was able to achieve how we get access to plain information on the internet.
So one of the things that I've always wondered about, high frequency trading, again, I don't know how much you know about the markets, right? But I mean, probably like I traded for a long time. So how do you maintain an arbitrage, both from an information standpoint and from a sort of data visualization standpoint? In other words, one of the things right now, at least it was true when I left the industry on a regular basis, was that the big hedge funds had way more information and faster information than everybody else, and that's why high frequency trading worked. But if you provide, and when I say you, I mean you as a proxy for everybody else that's kind of doing the stuff that you're doing, if you democratize the access to that information at speed, does it eliminate the information arbitrage and hence the trading edge that people might have, or are we still relying on people to be like afraid of making the wrong decision and not trading on information that's clearly obvious that a particular asset or a particular market or a particular whatever is going to go up or down or sideways or whatever? Do you know what I mean? Because if you and I both have the same information, your trade itself, again, like quantum physics, your observation of it alone can move the market, but your participation in the market can also move it. Do you know what I mean? So if we all have the same info, how are we winning?
So we're not in the game of making markets so simple that we can guarantee that everyone's going to get rich.
Anything, but if we all have access to the same information, the likelihood that we're going to make the same decision is just higher than it would be otherwise.
You're absolutely right, and that was a very good question, Michael, which I do not know, which I do not have an answer as of yet. But let me tell you, if you go on YouTube, if you go on these Discord servers, if you go on these Telegram channels, you'll have these Bitcoin channels and stocks channels and all these content creators with like screaming and saying, "Oh my God, Bitcoin is going to moon! Everyone's going to get rich!" All these all the clickbaits and whatnots. So I think there is a statistical evidence that a lot of people, majority of the people, fall into that because of how they present themselves, because of how they present that information with all the hopiums and really non-reliable information. So what I have figured is 9 out of 10 content creators or Discord servers or Telegram channels cannot be relied on. They cannot be relied on. What I have figured,
Because why?
Because everyone's trying to get rich so fast, Michael. Everybody wants to.
I've actually sat down with people that I know, and I didn't like. They were like, "Hey, let's go out to dinner, or whatever." And we sit down and like, "Okay, I know you used to work at Goldman Sachs. Tell me how I'm supposed to invest my money so I can get rich quickly." And I was like, "That's not the way it works." But anyway, so I understand the concept. Yeah.
People need to understand that the markets are very cyclic in nature. There's market cycles. There's business cycles. You have to remain grounded when it comes to investing in the markets. I think that's what people are missing out on, and that's when I figured I think I can solve this. I think I can solve this problem of retailers falling into this misinformation trap, and that's what I did after being, I think, 9 years into the market. I figured there is a way to do this. Things are much simpler than they really look.
Sure.
Now you can take examples of people like Gareth Soloway, if you know his name, or Benjamin Cowan. Amazing creators who do not sell hope or prey on innocent viewers on their channels. So you can take these examples and really understand that markets are people should not be really emotional when it comes to the markets, and patience, I think, does a lot of trick.
One more thing, and I'll let you go. Does better market intelligence come from having more information, do you think? In other words, more information is better, or is it just representing that information in a way that's clear?
I think it's representing the information in a way that's very clear. I think it's as simple as that. I think, Michael, a lot of times, I think the simple answer to complex questions, it's just yes or no. Do I invest in Bitcoin now? No. Is it a good time to enter? Is it a good time to buy Bitcoin in the month of July? No, right?
No,
so I think a lot of these things can be very predictable. Right. And I think a lot of people really fall into this trap and really lose a lot of money. And that's what we are aiming to solve. That's what Gilver.ai does.
Got it. Okay. Siraj, thank you so much. That's the fastest 20 minutes of my life. Thank you so much for coming and doing this. I really appreciate your time. Good luck on your building, and keep in touch, man.
Absolutely, Michael. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you as well.
All right, take care.
Okay, everybody, that's it today for ATP Insights. Thank you so much to all the people that joined us. We really appreciate it. Thank you to Brian Nguyen, who actually said hello to us in the chat. We'd love to have more interactivity in that chat. Give us a thumbs up on the video, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and follow us on all of our socials on X, on Instagram, and on LinkedIn. And feel free to comment on all those spaces. I'm very active on X. I'm always looking for somebody with which to converse on an intellectual level and just have fun. My name is Michael Waitze. So I'm going to say bye for now. We'll be back again. Today's Monday. We'll be back again on Thursday with more ATP Insights, more great guests, and more great news.